Sorry I'm late. Sorry about that. Alright, I just gotta finish setting some things up. Over there. I go over here. Alright, we should be good to go. Hope everybody's having a good Friday. Oh, that's religious. See what I did there? Let's put this... I don't know how, like, what is happening with my camera that I feel like I'm always drifting. Let's just finish setting things up and then we'll bring up our next guest, or our first guest rather. Oh, it is Friday the 13th. Happy Friday the 13th. May all of ye have excellent luck. Actually, maybe I should put this back. There, now I'm somewhere in the middle. Okay, just getting all set up. I know that we have a guest waiting. I'm just, you know, check my water bottle, drink some water. All right, let's get started. Talk to Cyanide Anthrax. Cyanide Anthrax. Hello. How's it going?
Fine.
Glad to hear it. Cyanide, do you think that there's a god?
Yeah.
And which one would that be?
That... I think I've been brainwashed.
Oh, that's a shame. Quit it.
Okay.
Okay. That was unusual. I mean, like, I don't know where he wanted me to go with that. It was a little, wasn't really much to say. Great start, though. The Politicator, how's it going?
Yeah, very nice. How are you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, a little bit of delay. I don't know why. It's a lot of delay.
Oh, well, if you want to try leaving and then closing the app and then reopening the app and then rejoining, you can. That should probably solve the delay. It's just weird when you see smart people spend their whole day on TikTok. I do this for 3 hours, 5 days a week. Is that my whole day? Actually, not even 5 days a week. I do this for 3 hours, 3 days a week, and then I do it for an hour and a half, 2 days a week. Is that my whole day? Or is it just when you're on TikTok, I also happen to be on TikTok, so it seems like I'm always on when you're on? Talk to Peso? I have no idea how to pronounce that name. Hey, how's it going?
What's up?
How do I pronounce your name?
Paco.
Paco. Okay, well, you have a whole bunch of little symbols in your...
Yeah, I just wanted to make it look cool.
All right,
yeah.
Fair enough. Paco, do you believe that there's a god?
Yeah. Wait, but before we get started, can I say something?
I guess.
I want to say that I love you, man. And
I appreciate that.
Sorry with bad times with your body, you know. And yeah. Sorry. I didn't mean to, like, be a downer. Sorry.
So you believe that there's a god?
Yeah, I do.
Right. Which one would that be?
It's not the conventional god, though. So
Which one?
I'm kind of like a weirdo. So I believe in Batman as God.
Okay. Do you think that Batman created the universe?
Yeah.
Okay. Why should I believe that Batman created the universe?
Because he's cool, and I love you. Okay, bye.
Goodbye, Paco. We have two super chats from Nekdu with the $2. So nice of you to stream on my birthday. Happy birthday, Nekdu. You were born on a 13th. Nekdu clarifies, sorry, on my birthday. I always forget a word when writing super chats. Well, happy birthday. Nekdu is a longtime supporter and a longtime helper out of the channel. So let's get a big happy birthday for Nekdu, everybody. There's like several hundred people in here. We should be able to get some going on, right? Big happy birthday wishes. In the meantime, let's bring up our next guest. Talk to Andre. Andre, how's it going?
What's up, brother? Doing good.
Glad to hear it. Andre, do you believe in a god?
Yes.
And which one would that be, just so I don't make any bad assumptions about you?
Do you believe in the Bible, or?
I mean, no, but I did ask you a question, and I was just hoping for clarification on which god you believe in. Which god is it that you believe in?
Jesus Christ.
Oh, okay. Okay, that helps. So, look, I don't. Why do you think I should?
I mean, you know what's actually crazy? The Bible actually says that there is no God.
The Bible says that there is no god?
Yeah.
That is crazy.
You want to hear
So why
it?
do you believe in it?
Look at it. Psalms 14:1. Can you look at it? Look it up.
Sure,
please?
I'll pull up Psalms 14:1 for you.
Can you read it for me?
Yeah. Let me pull up the NRSV. NSRV. I can never remember what the yeah, here we go. Wait, where is it? Yeah. NRSVU. E. Forgot the E at the end. God, OBS is sometimes the worst. Let me select it. Okay, there we go. So here's the verse that you want. Fools say in their hearts, there is no God. They are corrupt and they do abominable deeds. There is no one who does good. So is it your view that this is saying that there is no God?
Well, the way I'm trying to see is we can actually use the reference. There is no God. You know what I'm saying? But
so in your view, there is no God, but you do believe in God.
I'm just trying to show you that, you know, what you sometimes claim that there is no God, you know.
Yeah, I don't think that there is.
According to what I believe, only a fool will say there is no God.
Yep.
So what I'm trying to say,
I don't believe that the thing that you believe in is true, so why would I care what the thing that you believe in says?
I don't believe that non-life came from non-life.
Are you sure?
Wait, hold on. Life came from...
I'm a little puzzled here, right? So, like, when you say non-life came from non-life, don't crystals grow all the time in caves and, you know, they grow from non-living things and crystals themselves aren't living? Isn't that an example of non-life coming from non-life?
But as far as animals, human life...
Animals aren't non-life.
Animals are non-life.
No, animals are life.
Are life, right.
Yeah. So what is it that you don't believe?
You said crystals. I mean, where are you coming up with crystals?
Well, you said you don't believe that non-life doesn't come... You don't believe that non-life comes from non-life. So... Yeah. Crystals are non-life, and water droplets that form crystals are also non-life, and that's an example of non-life coming from non-life.
How would you explain to the whole world how we were all created at once? Just mysteriously...
Well, I don't think that we were all created at once. I think that, you know, you and I don't know how old you are. I was created like 32 years ago. Right. I imagine that you were created around the same time, maybe plus or minus 10 years.
Right.
And so, like, that's not at the same time as our parents were created. Our parents were created like a few decades before that, right? So I don't think that we all are created at the same time all at once.
So if you would start it, Earth, how would you start it?
How would I start what?
If you were an atheist, and how would you start life? With non-life and humans, animals, how would you actually start?
How would I start it?
Yes.
Like, you mean if I have a time machine?
Or
Yeah, let's pretend you get a solid empty Earth. How would you start life on it?
Well, I'm not a chemist, so I probably wouldn't know how.
Okay. I mean,
How would
how
you
would
start
life
life?
start exactly?
How would you
That's what I'm
start
trying to
life if
get.
you had a time machine?
There is a God.
How does that answer my
Well,
question? How would you start life if there's a time machine?
no, you came up with the time machine. I didn't.
Well, you asked me how I would start
No,
life
no,
on
I'm
an
just
empty
saying,
Earth. I
like,
imagine a time machine is involved.
because I'm pretty sure you believe on the Big Bang Theory, you know what I'm saying? And that's the reason why it's called a Big Bang Theory, correct?
I have no idea what that question means.
So you
I
can't
believe
prove
in the
that.
Big Bang Theory. That's why it's called the Big Bang Theory. What does that mean? Me believing in something doesn't have anything to do with what it's named. Oh, he left. That's a shame too, because that was like excellent content. In fact, it's probably still going on YouTube, even though it was only 5 minutes, because that was brilliant. All right, let's talk to the Politicator again. He's back. Politicator, how's it going? Welcome back.
Hello. Hopefully it's better now.
Yeah, it sounds better.
Yeah.
So, Politicator, do you
All
believe in a
good.
god?
So, I believe in what I know. So I give you my definition of God if you want, but I do not believe in God just because the definition of God after years of defining myself as an atheist as well. Well, if we want to talk about God, we need to exactly pose your question. What are you talking about? So if we want to talk about God, for me is the whole, everything ever created that will be created, in a word, us as well, me
Okay.
and you. So
Look, Politicator.
that's it.
So
Yeah.
I agree that everything that exists. And so if all you mean by God is all of the things that exist and everything that will exist, then I agree that thing. I agree that everything exists. But like, that's just a semantic discussion. Then it's not really a substantive disagreement.
Yeah, no, well, okay, the disagreement is that I don't want to call myself and be identified as an atheist, and not
Your
even
microphones got really quiet.
Hello?
Oh, so much better.
Now?
Yeah, it's much better.
The thing is that I don't want to be identified as an atheist nor as a believer.
Okay, well, I mean, look,
being. That's what I am. So
look, I'm fine identifying you however you want, but you and I don't seem to have a substantive disagreement. It seems like we agree on the things that exist, and we agree on the things that don't exist. So there's really not much more to talk about.
But you agree that everything that exists, including me and you, we could call or name it God?
You can look. This is merely a definition. This is merely a definitional disagreement. I wouldn't use the word God to describe that because I think God means something else. If you want to use God to describe that, fine. But it's just we're not disagreeing on the substance. We're just disagreeing on definitions.
Yeah, but I think
like you can call it whatever you want. You can call this water bottle God if you want. That's just a semantic disagreement, not a substantive one.
Yes. So again, if you want a disagreement,
I would prefer to talk with someone who has a substantive disagreement with me. So I'm gonna let you go. But thank you for being here. Oh shoot! You know what I realized I don't have? I don't have the. Okay, don't mind me. I'm just gonna grab something real quick. I just gotta grab. The topic isn't changing, I promise. I just gotta grab the copy. Just gotta grab something. Oh. Sorry, don't mind me. Don't mind me. I just gotta grab a link. Okay, there we go. There we go. Okay. Let's read a super chat and then we'll move on to our next guest. From King Peanut with the $5. Theist, you can only be right about atheism if you know everything and can prove everything. Insane double standard they have. I know, right? It's annoying. It's funny though. And from The Last Judge with the £10. Thank you so much, the last judge. Hello, Blitz. Keep up the good work. Once again, I bring the fun word of the day. Sonder, noun. I actually know this one. The profound realization that every other human has a life as complex as your own. Yeah, it is kind of disturbing when it happens to you. But in a kind of good way, right? I believe I spoke to How and Why 2 days ago. He's a flat earther, but we can talk to him about God. That might be interesting. How and Why, how's it going?
Hey, good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. How and Why, do you believe in God?
Well, I pretty much am more or less on your lines on that. I'm not a big religion follower, but I do believe there is a higher intelligence. I believe that.
Oh, okay. So you do believe in a God?
I don't know whether you call it God or not, but you can term it like you just said. You can take the Bible and name whatever you want. But I believe there is a higher.
So do you believe that there is like a creator of the universe?
I don't know. Maybe we are all co-creators. As creation creates itself. Who knows what is the model? It's a very highly debatable. But this whole concept of God tied to religions and all these different dogmas and cultures, I kind of believe that these are all man-made over different times. And so is the atheist who doesn't believe in anything and just happens to believe everything just came about either. That's not I don't think that's right either.
Okay. Well, so then what's the substantive disagreement?
The disagreement is about, I was just looking at the pendulous range that you were talking about yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I looked into that, dude. So I cannot believe the sham you're pulling on that.
So that wasn't yesterday, that was 2 days ago, by the way. And that the shape of the earth is not the topic of discussion here. If you want to talk about the existence of a god or a higher power, then we can. Otherwise, I'm going to have to move on to the next guest.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't want to talk too much, but I just looked into the structure.
He can come back. Well, maybe he can come back. Who knows? Maybe I'll bring him back up on Flat Earth Day, but that's not today. Let's talk to Nightmare Jr. Nightmare Jr., how's it going?
Hi. I'm just trying to get some clarification. What is your definition of God that you're trying to argue against?
I mean, it's a fairly broad definition that's common in the West. Something like a being that created the universe, or perhaps grounds the universe, or is the foundation for all of reality. Something like that.
Gotcha.
It should also have a mind, by the way. That's usually the part of the definition. Go ahead.
Gotcha. So, have you? I've been following you for a long time, but not in every live chat. So I don't know if you guys went down the the time continuum argument of what came before the Big Bang, before that.
You're cutting out a bit, by the way.
Oh, sorry. Have you
now.
argued the time continuum?
Oh, it's cutting out again.
Where you go like what came before Earth? Oh dear. Let me see. Is that better?
It's fine now, but it seems to me like going in and out occasionally. Are you driving?
I am.
Well,
let me pull over.
Go ahead and pull over. It'll probably stabilize your connection, and then you won't be off of you won't be breaking TOS. While you do that, I'm going to shut the door.
I just pulled over. Gotcha.
Yeah. So, what's the question?
Have you? Has anyone argued the time continuum argument, where what happened before Earth, before the galaxy, before the Big Bang, and all that?
I mean, that doesn't sound like an argument. It just sounds like a question.
Well, because the idea stems from what started everything, and I'm sure that posed a question. Because are you a believer that the Big Bang? So, right. Existence came out of nothing?
I'm of the view that there was never nothing.
Well, can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah. There was never a moment in time, nor a state of affairs absent time, where there was nothing.
Gotcha. And this kind of ties in. I know I'm going to go off on a tangent, but what about the spooky theory, where as you observe things, state of it changes, right?
What does this have to do with the existence of a creator? Well,
so I'm trying to get at we believe that we have free will, and the free will comes from having an ethereal existence from a soul, right?
Who's
so,
we?
Well, if you believe in God, supposedly, like it
Do
all
you believe in God?
Yeah, to an
Okay.
extent.
Just to be clear, like, which God is it? Are you like, would you call yourself a Christian, or are you kind of just like vaguely believe in a creator kind of thing?
I follow predominantly a Christian denomination, but I'm still learning. I'm still learning about my surroundings.
Sure. That's fair. That's fair. I just wanted to set some, set a foundation for the conversation. Yeah, I mean, like, look, I don't think that we have souls. I also don't think that free will is a thing, at least not in the libertarian sense. I think that there's probably some compatibility that you can have between a sense of free will and a sense of determinism, or a sense of, failure to have free will in that sense. I'm just not really convinced that these intuitions that we have necessarily point at something that's true, and I'm also not convinced that the universe must have needed a creator. So
Gotcha, because my argument was going to be, I know simulation's very popular, and I just assumed you would follow something along that line of simulation theory.
No, I think that that's wildly misinformed.
Gotcha. Okay. So if we follow the time continuum argument, you say that there was always something, and that time. What's your opinion on dimensions then? Because if something happened before the Big Bang and time was a result of that,
I don't think that time was a result of the Big Bang.
Or dimensionally speaking, that's the earliest that we can peer back into the universe.
Well, with like current tech, sure. We actually can't even peer back that far. We can see like a few 100,000 years after the Big Bang.
Yeah, but time is also intricately tied into gravity, and when matter was created at that time, so that's why I'm saying time was created during the Big Bang.
So you don't need matter to have gravity. You can just have
of course not.
So and there's not really a reason to think that gravity was created at the Big Bang either. So not really sure where to go from there. Look, the way I see it is that there was stuff 13.8 billion years ago that was really, really hot and really, really dense. That stuff began expanding because it was really, really hot and really, really dense, perhaps for other more complicated reasons as well. Before that, the universe may have been in a variety of different states. We don't really know what kinds of states the universe could have been in before that. There's this idea called inflation, which is pretty popular. It's perhaps not the majority view, but it is a mainstream view. It's probably the plurality view, that there was a period of time called inflation beforehand, where the universe was essentially very cold and very empty, but it was expanding very, very rapidly. And there's other kind of more fringe views where the universe was collapsing before the Big Bang, and so until it reached this very, very small state, and then it re-expanded. There's a bunch of different ideas as to what was going on. I'm not really convinced of any one of them in particular, but I'm not sure why any of this means that there should be a creator.
Well, so the universe just happens to exist as is, beyond the realm of a creator. It just happened to exist.
Well, my view is that it doesn't really make sense for there to be nothing, so there had to be something.
Well, the common thing that they tell us during the Big Bang is that with the antimatter and matter went out by a small margin.
It did, yeah. At least that's the idea.
Yeah. So if it went towards the antimatter out, like, would there just be more nothing in that sense?
No, if there was more antimatter, then we would be made of antimatter, and we would call antimatter matter, and call matter antimatter.
That's true too. But I'm just not sold on the idea that the universe, regardless of like the different dimensions or the continuum, so to speak, was formed out of nothing. Like, it had to start.
Well, I also don't think it was formed out of nothing.
Of course not. Not. It was formed by something.
I don't think that there ever was nothing.
If there is, Am I thinking too linear in terms of this? Because if there is always something,
Mm-hmm.
and if we keep so if we think in terms of a linear timeline, if there was always something, even
Yeah.
if it was a, let's say like we take time out of the equation, there's a different dimension. I don't think there's a possibility that it could have just existed continuously.
Why not?
This is true. I see what you're saying now. I think we're gonna agree to disagree at this point.
I mean, look, I think that there are questions that are hard to answer that we perhaps don't know the answer to as far as like cosmology is concerned. But I think that there are probably better reasons to like not believe in a god, at least not the kind of god that Christianity purports to exist.
Of course.
Right? Like, I mean, just consider, how old are you?
39.
Okay. So do you remember when the Australian wildfires happened?
Yeah.
Okay. So like this was like 5 years ago or something like this. It was like around COVID, maybe 6 years ago. You know how many animals died?
Not offhand. I'm sure
Literally
it was quite a bit.
billions. It was literally billions. The estimate is something like 2 billion. 2 billion animals burned to death. And like, if there is a god, it doesn't seem like that god is compatible with being good. If it'll let 2 billion animals die in like a few weeks. Like burned to death too. This is not just like a painless thing, right?
So you're going into good and evil, or like morality in a sense of how we view it in that regard.
Well, I mean, look, like either this god like if this god has the property of, you know, being all good and, you know, all knowing and all these things, then it seems like either our sense of right and wrong was instilled in us by this god, in which case we can trust our morality and we can trust our sense of right and wrong to be able to come to conclusions about what things are good and what things are evil, or in which case we can then use that intuition to conclude that, yeah, there's definitely something evil about letting billions of animals burn to death, or we just can't trust our intuitions about what's right and wrong at all. And I think that being able to say that, I think that saying that we can't trust our intuitions about what's right and wrong at all, I think that that's probably a tough pill to swallow, because that would mean that, like, even though things might seem wrong, that doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that you have any reason to think that they are.
So I think that's I do believe in evolution. I think that's a case of social evolution, of where our moralities evolved for survival's sake. But humanity's been trying to argue the good and bad, like Taoism, or even like yin and yang, for example, right? You can't have the good without the bad, and understanding the duality of nature.
I don't think that, like, look, maybe it's true. Maybe it's absolutely true that you need some degree of suffering, or maybe not suffering, but some degree of struggle in order to understand joy, or to be happy, to see the good in things. You have to see some degree of bad. The question is not like whether or not there can be some. The question is like, is there this, like, does there really need to be this much? Like an egregious level of suffering?
That's debatable, and how much of that is caused by well, this going back to the free will argument, how much is that caused by our actions? Like,
so
that we
as
chose
far
to
as
do?
we can tell, the Australian bushfire was caused by a lightning strike.
Gotcha. Environmental changes.
Well, I mean, like, lightning happens whether or not, like, climate change is happening, right? Like,
Absolutely.
Lightning's been a thing forever. So this is not something that was, this was not like a free will issue, right? This was not like some evil that was caused by humans, at least not as far as we can tell.
Well, I feel like we could have curbed it to some extent, because Australia in particular.
How could we have curbed it? Nobody lives there.
Well, changes in the environment, like the Great Barrier Reef bleaching and the destruction of it, has been directly caused by us. So
But we're not talking about the Great Barrier Reef. We're talking about the Australian bushfires, which were in the southwestern part of Australia, which is like basically completely uninhabited by humans.
I know, but I still think that was caused by global changes. And even if it was caused by more natural, because the climate's been changing for a long time now. Like, we have large sways in what is it? Like vast arid regions changing. Egypt, for example, is becoming a complete drought zone area when it used to be a flood zone with the Great Nile and everything. Like water dependency is a very...
Suppose that's in some way, indirectly, through the actions of humans hundreds of years ago, they did the whole butterfly effect thing, and this caused the lightning strike in the arid region of southwestern Australia where nobody lives, which caused the death of 2 billion animals. Fine. Whether or not that's the case, if this god was watching and knew that this was happening, without preventing it, it just seems evil, right? I mean, like, look, we can shrink this down and think about a simpler analogy. If you are, let's say that you're walking around on the street, maybe it's after dinner or something, you're getting back from dinner, and you're like a normal American, so you're armed, you know, for self-defense, and you look in an alley as you're walking down, and you see some guy like about to rape a woman, like violently. If you just watch and then keep walking and don't do anything, I would say that you're not a good person.
So the bystander effect.
You're the only person there. The bystander effect is irrelevant. The bystander effect happens when there's a lot of people who are watchers.
Gotcha. So, all right, only person there, you're, morally speaking, you're absolutely correct. But in a societal sense, there's a lot of places like China, for example, where if you do try to interfere and help, you become responsible in some form.
But we're talking morally, we're not talking legally.
But I'm saying your actions affect, societal consequences affect your actions, and despite how you feel morally, sometimes your actions don't necessarily represent that.
We're not talking about legal questions. We're talking about the morality of the issue, right?
Yeah,
the morality of the issue is that you would be a bad person, and that's basically what God did. He just sat and watched as 2 billion animals burned to death.
Okay, let me give you a different example. So dinosaurs there's different periods, but they became extinct over time, right?
Yeah, they suffered immensely. Yeah, you're right. That's another great example. So
if they didn't happen, we wouldn't be apex predators. Like there are certain actions that are unforeseen at our time, like that only time will tell if it's a good or bad thing. I mean, a lot of it is bad. Just death happens in life.
I mean, he could have ensured that the extinction of the dinosaurs happened without immense suffering.
Like a meteor strike?
I mean, so the way that the dinosaurs actually went extinct was not by an immediate meteor strike and then they were all vaporized. Like
starvation afterwards.
Right, it was starvation. And that's so much worse than just being immediately vaporized, right?
You can't Thanos snap life out of existence then, because it's one of those. If you believe he has the power to do so, like what if it's like a domino effect? He sets things in motion.
Does he not have the power to do so?
What if that was the intent, though? Because if you are arguing that we don't have free will and everything is in a predeterministic way, then maybe that was all according to his plan for a greater, I'm using air quotes, but for a greater good, for example. And a greater good can only be defined what God deems as good, because that would, be what he.
So it just seems like you now have no. Like, if your view is that, like, bad things are able to happen even if it's for some greater good that we don't know about, I don't know if you know what this is called. This is called skeptical theism. But once you fall into skeptical theism as your explanation for why bad things can happen that are seemingly, like, obviously bad, then it seems like you just have no good reason to trust any of your sense of morality, like, at all. You have no good reason to think that, like, we should try to cure cancer or that we should stop people from raping each other, because maybe all of these things have a greater good in mind.
So that goes in hand with the saying, like, good intentions pave the path to hell, right? So
I think it's the path to hell is paved with good intentions.
Or,
but
yeah. You get point stands. How many times did we as humans try to go against nature for a better cause that ended up hurting something in a broader scheme?
I don't know. Yeah, I guess you'd have to quantify that. Look, maybe you can say that. Maybe you can say that that's the case, but it doesn't address my criticism that if you hold the view that you know, things are happening the way they are, if things are happening the way they are because it's for God's greater plan, for some greater good that is being aimed at, then you just can't really make any moral judgment calls ever, because you can't say that there isn't a greater good that's going to avail itself as a result of this bad thing that you're trying to judge, right? You can't say, oh, well, you know, the Holocaust was bad, because what if there's a greater good that comes about from it, right? You can't say, oh, you know, the rape of Nanjing or of Nanking was bad, because, oh, there's a greater good that comes about from it. You can't say that, you know, I don't know, insert other XYZ bad thing is bad, because maybe there's just, like, you just can't judge things anymore. And I don't know, man, if that's the view that you have to take, where you can't come to any moral conclusions about anything, that just seems like you're kind of stuck.
So I want to separate the fact that we're trying to define if God is morally good or not, when what I believe in God doing versus my moral sense are separated. I have my own personal beliefs that have been shaped by my environment, but I can't necessarily hold God accountable, because that existence, like Mother Nature, for example, rules of man play by a different ball game than rules of nature.
Rules of man play by a different ball game than rules of nature?
Well, yeah, so like rules of man do not
means.
supersede the rules of nature. So like murder, we might inherently believe is bad. And that ties into the fact that there's death, but our natural laws have life and death happens.
Right, but why do we think that murder is bad?
And going back to what I initially said, I talked about is from our social evolution, what we depended on for survival as we evolved as humans. Maybe like when you take somebody out of your community, that could be producing at a hard time. Of course it's bad. It takes someone out permanently. There's emotions involved, right? That's all physical traits, physical responses. Some people are for the death penalty for egregious crimes, for example, and they morally justify that. But these are all still rules that we made as man.
So is it your view that, like, our moral intuitions, the things that we think of as bad and the things that we think of as good, don't actually point to any goodness, or aren't necessarily in agreement with goodness or badness properties that God has?
If you, I see your main argument, because you're arguing on the Christian, the Bible sense, where a lot of our morals, the Bible basically shapes our morals.
Well, no, I'm not trying to say that. Like, look, I'm not trying to like straw man your view. Like, maybe you don't believe that. I'm just saying, look, it sounds like you believe that our morals come from the evolutionary process, which I basically agree with, by the way, that that's where our morals come from.
Yeah.
But my question is you believe that there's a God that exists, and you believe that that God has this property of being good, right? Inherently
Yeah,
good. Yeah, it's like perfectly good, the most good possible. This God is that, right? So the question is that sense of good that God is that aligned with what we think of as good? Or are they just kind of completely unrelated notions of good?
They're completely unrelated.
Okay, so what does good mean in the sense, in the godly sense?
In a godly sense, good means working, because I'm trying to define God, but good means what God deems necessary for his actions. Like if he wills it, then we're doing the will. So you would be bad. So like so going back to the Bible, when we chose to disobey God, right? Like don't eat from the tree of knowledge. That was inherently bad. So that would be considered bad because that was against his will in a fundamental sense.
So in your view, if God commanded that, I don't know, that let's say that, you know how Jesus was like 29 or something when he figured out that he was, you know, a prophet or like the son of God? He was just like a regular carpenter before that. So like you're 39, right? Maybe you figure out tomorrow that you're actually like the next prophet. You are God reincarnated. You are the second coming, if you will. And God commands you, and you know that it's God, by the way. This is not just you having a delusion. This is actually God. You know that God commands you to, you know, go to your next door neighbor and, you know, grab their infant children and grind them up into baby paste and then make a baby burger out of them, right? God commands you to do this. Now, obviously, you and I would say that that's horrible, right? Like that'd be a horrible thing to do. But would this be a good thing for God to command you because it's, you know, in line with God's will?
So that argument still deviates from the point, because from the Christian theology, Jesus was Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
He you know, he was somehow born without, you know, at non-earthly means. We have that unfortunate action happen in history. Recently, it's come into like worshippers of Baal. They sacrifice their children to this inanimate god. So there are instances of that where people are not God, imaginary God, telling them to do that. So I still think that's a separate, complete issue. If hypothetically speaking, I knew I was the second coming of Messiah, then nobody would be telling me otherwise.
Maybe you're the next prophet, let's say. You know, like there were different prophets like Samuel and Isaiah and Ezekiel, and so God decided that we need another prophet before the second coming. And so God instructs you, the next prophet, God instructs you that this is his will, and he needs you to carry out this task.
So the Bible kind of clearly defines that too, but there were certain like miracles back then that were performed to prove that point, though.
Yeah. Let's say that he enables you with the ability to perform miracles. You know, you can smite people, and then he commands you to go smite your neighbor's baby and turn them into burgers.
So if I can create magic out of thin air for some unexplainable reason.
Well, no, it's very explainable. God has told you that he has chosen you to be his next prophet.
And if I'm doing that, then wouldn't that be an argument for God?
Yeah, my question is whether or not this God would be good.
According to my own personal morals, it wouldn't, but we've separated the fact that my morals do not justify or even can quantify God's morals, because
look, I agree. But you would say that it is good for God to order you to do that, or for God to command you to do that, because the God version of good is just whatever God needs to enact his plan.
What if he told me to go back in time?
You cut out. You there? Maybe he went back in time, y'all. Did he actually time travel? Damn, is that all you have to do? You just have to say, maybe if I just go back in time. That's crazy. Maybe the dude just went back in time. That was incredible. Maybe he's going to Stephen Hawking's time traveler's party. Wonderful. That was wonderful. Bravo. All right, we have some super chats to read, and then we'll bring up our next guest. From C-Bar with the $5. Did you really go to high school with Timothy Chalamet? I did not. No, I did not. From Christopher Sanford with the £5. For someone who believes in an eternal being, this caller is really struggling to contend with the concept that something could have always existed. Well, yeah, but people generally take like metaphysical eternal beings to be more possible for some reason than like physical eternal beings. By the way, just to clarify, the argument that I was making was it was basically an intuition pump, namely that there's something very weird about our morality not having anything to do with God's morality. Because if God is supposed to be all good, but God's morality is just whatever is necessary for God to achieve his ends, then it seems like God can order things that would seem most heinous to us, and we must still consider them good. That's just very, very unintuitive. From the last judge with the £5. Hi again, Blitz. As you knew, Sonder, perhaps you won't know Agatha Ecological, composed of both good and evil. Another fun word is valetudinarian. I don't know either of those words. Thank you for introducing them to me. From the last judge again with the 10 pounds. Hello, Blitz. Keep up the good work. Oh, no. This was a repeat. Sorry. That happens sometimes. That was a repeat too. We have 110 TRY, which I don't know what that is. But we will learn. This is 110 Turkish lira. It's about 250. Thank you so much, Emre Kipman. If you want, can elaborate. What is the use of twistor space or twistor theory? Does it help to understand the lack of strength of gravity or unifying relativity in quantum theory? There was a hope that twistors would be relevant in like theories of everything, like string theory, but my knowledge of twistors basically ends there. I went to a conference on twistors where Roger Penrose was speaking, and he's the inventor of twistors, hoping to learn about what twistors are, and I came back more confused. And from Sonus Percussion with the 500 ARS, which I believe that is about 36 peso or 36 cents, but I appreciate it regardless. Doesn't the question, which god do you believe in, already show how sketchy religions are? Greetings from Argentina. Yeah, it does, but that's okay. People believe in different gods. From Git Stanfield with the $10. If you equivocate on God by referring to such as an agent that created the universe and also say that it's goodness, you're equivocating, which is a fallacy. Well, no, I mean, like, look, people believe that God is both the creator of the universe and also a thing that is perfectly good and perfect and like all powerful and all of this stuff. So people believe both things. From John O. Ratcliffe with the $2. What's the call-in number? There isn't a phone number. You have to go to the link. Sorry, it's just not visible. You have to go to the link go to the Discord link that is above my head. If you, or you can call on TikTok, which is generally easier. But if you go to the Discord link, then it'll be, that's probably an easy way to get there. We have some guests on Discord that I should bring in. Let's talk to Jinja Ninja. Jinja Ninja, how's it going?
Wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Jinja Ninja, you're a little bit on the quiet end. If you could turn up your microphone volume or something like that, that'd be good.
Yeah, give me 2 seconds. Normally, I have the opposite problem where people say I'm very loud, and so
Sure.
I normally have to change audio output. No, not audio output.
I think that we're probably fine.
Okay, I can also try and talk a little bit louder.
Yeah, no, we're fine. Audio seems good.
Tend to be a bit more soft-spoken.
You're good. So, Ninja, do you believe in a god?
Yes, I do.
And which one would that be?
Well, what most refer to as the Christian God, or the Trinity, the Triune, the Father, the Son,
so
the
you're
Holy
Christian.
Spirit.
Fine.
Yeah.
That works for me. So, look, I'm not. What's the the best argument or the best reason that you can think of that might convince me that Christianity is true?
Oh, I think the one that convinced me was just like, when you think about creation, what really did it for me was looking at like a sunset or a sunrise, or really just anything in nature, just how our world works is so like intricately designed, and if even a single like fraction was off, it wouldn't work the way that it does. Like if the expansion of the universe was either a fraction of a second faster or slower, it wouldn't have come to be. The way that the world all works together and everything in it, like nature all works together, points to some sort of design. Because like if you were to take every color that you could see in a sunset and put it in one container and throw it at a canvas, what are the odds you're going to get something that looks like a sunset?
Right, but
nothing.
The claim is not that the universe is random, right?
No.
Maybe that's what you would expect if the universe was random, but I'm not making the claim that the universe is random.
So if the universe wasn't random, it's created, right?
No. It's not like the only two options are random or created, right?
Well, the options are either it exists or it doesn't exist.
Well, it definitely exists. Like the universe definitely exists. We can agree on that.
So where did it come from?
I don't think that there was ever nothing. So I think the question of where it came from is probably a malformed one.
Okay, so when did life as we know it start then?
4 billion years ago-ish.
Okay, but then how did we get to... Because 13 billion years ago, there weren't humans.
Right.
Right? So when did we come in, and how did we come in?
I mean, humans showed up on the scene, depending on, like, modern Homo sapien came on the scene like 300,000-ish years ago. The Homo genus, which is, you know, generally what we would call humans, I think Homo evolved like 2 million years ago or something like this. So, look, my view is that humans evolved through, humans evolved from non-human ancestors. This is a biological process that is expected if you have a large quantity, or if you have a finite amount of resources and organisms that consume resources and are able to reproduce. So it just seems like that we don't really need a designer in order to account for the diversity of life that we see on Earth, for example.
How does it not point to a creator?
Well, evolution is very much the kind of process that you can program into a computer. And I know that you say, oh, but you have to program it. Like if you just program in the conditions required for evolution, then evolution will happen whether you want it to or not, right? If you program in some sort of, you know, environment that has finite resources, and then organisms that reproduce, and organisms that consume resources, and organisms that have the ability to change, evolution will happen whether you want it to or not. So evolution, as like once you've set the stage for this kind of life to exist, evolution will happen, and there's no design necessary for it to happen.
But you just said the stage has to be set for it to happen,
so
right?
that's a separate question as to where life came from. So I think that life originated via a chemical process. Setting the stage here is so like we agree that Earth has finite resources, and like that's not something that, like, obviously any planet is going to have finite resources. So the question is just, how did life originate in a way that it's capable of reproducing and it requires resources? Now we can just define life as those things that require resources and are capable of reproducing and changing. So then the question is just, how did life originate? And my view is that it's probably a chemical process.
So if it's a chemical process, then we should be able to recreate that chemical process, correct?
And we can in part, but you know, it's seemingly complicated. And so, you know, in the event that we can't that we can't yet reproduce it, that doesn't rule out that it's a chemical process.
But the whole thing on science is we have to be able to prove it for it to be true, right?
Yeah, sure.
So if we're boiling it down to life started as a chemical process, and that's what we're going as fact, we need to be able to prove it.
I'm not making the claim that this is fact. That's just my view.
Okay.
It seems most plausible to me.
Well, okay, what makes it seem more plausible than some being intentionally creating it?
Yeah, like, I mean, well, first of all,
do you think there's a purpose to this life?
I don't think that there's some external purpose, but look, the reason why I think it's more plausible is because I think that there's a few reasons. First, it is just the case that life is chemistry, right? Life is complicated chemistry contained in bags, right? Like our skin is our bag, and the thing that makes us be alive is just the chemistry that happens inside the skin bag, right? So like that's like clearly life is chemistry. So if life was going to have a natural origin, it would originate from a chemical process. And throughout the last 70-ish years, we have made progress like designing experiments that reproduce various parts of the requirements necessary to create life. So for example, there was a really famous experiment in the 50s done by Urey and Miller, where they basically showed that if you just, you know, take the conditions of the early Earth, like, you know, hot and wet and lots of chemicals being around and lightning and stuff, you can produce amino acids. And I think nucleotides, can be produced just via these natural chemical processes. And a later reproduction of their experiment showed that not only can you produce that, you can also produce things that look an awful lot like cell membranes. And so like these kinds of experiments, and there's a bunch of other experiments with it, these kinds of experiments are the kinds of things I would expect to be possible if it's the case that life arose via chemistry. So it just seems plausible to me.
But it's the way, from what I understand, if you just explaining it, is those trials are still like, we're only able to do it in parts. We're not able to do it in totality, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, we haven't completely reproduced life in a laboratory, but my point is that we're making progress on doing that, and considering that we know life is chemistry, it seems plausible that this is the kind of thing that, you know, might take a little bit of finagling, but it seems like the kind of thing that could absolutely happen in the future.
So you think in the future we could realistically get to a point where we can create life?
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay, so then life is created.
Well, we would be able to reproduce the conditions in a, you know, in the early Earth that would have given rise to life, and then we can just let it go and it will give rise to life. I don't think that life was created on Earth by like a creator. I think that that there were the conditions required on Earth for life to arise naturally, and we can reproduce those conditions and show that life arises naturally.
But it is only under those specific conditions that we are creating that we can reproduce it.
Well,
so it would
yeah,
infer,
if the conditions weren't there, then the conditions wouldn't be there.
Hold on, let me, exactly. So if the conditions weren't there, how did they get there? Just random chance?
Sorry, I'm just answering a text from my wife. Look, I mean, there are different planets, and those different planets have different conditions on them. Our planet happens to be in the right place, at the right temperature, with the right materials on it, that it had the right conditions for life to arise. Other planets don't, so there's no life on those planets.
And you think that was just random chance?
I think it was kind of inevitable, considering the size of the universe.
But the universe didn't start out at the size that it is.
No, but by the time, you know, by the time 8 billion years had rolled around, which is around when, you know, the Earth formed, 8 billion years after the Big Bang, the universe was very, very big, and there were very, very many planets. Enough that, you know, just you know, as you say, by random chance, at least one of them would have the right conditions.
But the odds of that happening are so astronomical that we can't even fathom.
Why do you think so?
Because it hasn't happened in, look at how many times that planets have been formed.
Mm-hmm.
And for out of all of the trillions, more than that, because there's an infinite number of planets out there, and out of all of them, only one of them. Well, if the universe is constantly expanding, like science says it is,
I mean, the universe can be finite and also be expanding. But look, how many places do you think that we've honestly and, you know, thoroughly checked for life? How many planets do you think that we've checked?
We haven't even fully checked our own planet, considering most of the ocean is still unexplored.
We do know that our planet has life, right?
Yes, but
so,
I mean,
so we've checked our planet.
I wasn't talking specifically about checking our planet for life. It was more so the large scope of how little we actually dive into things.
Right, but that's not really relevant for the part of the conversation. What I was getting at is that it might be the case that there are, you know, a quadrillion planets within the observable universe or something like this. We've only checked like 3. So to say that we're the only ones seems very, very far-fetched.
But if we can see all those if we can see all of these planets,
we can't. We've only seen like 5,000 planets total, and these are not. We're not like seeing them like we see Mars. We're seeing them like we see like a single pixel, and it's really hard to check from a single pixel whether or not there's life on that pixel.
But you can use the knowledge we already have to gain inferences off of them, correct?
Not very directly, no, not really. What we can do is we can do things like we can if we're lucky, occasionally we can analyze like the makeup of the planet to see like what kind of chemicals are present there. And so sometimes we'll be like, huh, this planet has this chemical, and on Earth, that chemical only comes about from life. So if that chemical is on that planet, maybe that means that there's life on that planet. And that's happened once or twice before. But it's really, really hard to make any definitive claims that there's no life anywhere else in the universe. In fact, we actually, like, this came out at the end of 2025. We now have pretty compelling evidence that there was life on Mars.
Okay, what is that evidence?
It was basically tiny fossilized bubbles that have chemicals in them that, as far as we can tell, form from bacteria. There was like a big press conference about this, I think in like November or December of last year.
I must have missed it. I was.
You should look into it. It's pretty neat.
I was in the middle of getting back to the States from being in the UK for a year.
That's fair.
So it was a whole wasn't paying attention to a lot of things that were going on in the news at that time.
Look, man, that's totally fair.
Where were we in the argument?
So
that life isn't anywhere else in the universe.
And I just think I think that's super far-fetched to say that we're the only life in the universe.
I can see why, but until proven otherwise, like, we have no reason to necessarily believe that there is.
Sure we do. I mean, we have reason to believe. Like, I've already laid out the reason for why. I've already laid out the reasons for why one might think that life originates via chemistry. And so if you have reason to believe that life originates chemically, and there are other planets, if there's sufficiently many planets, then you have reason to believe that life would arise chemically in other places aside from just here.
Okay. So until when do you think we'll ever get to the point of knowing?
Of knowing if there's life on other planets? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, I wouldn't be surprised if within our lifetime we actually found fossilized life on Mars. Like direct examples of fossilized life on Mars. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened.
And if it doesn't?
Well, then I'll be dead.
Like,
right?
If in several thousand years the end of humanity has come, and like we know everything there is to know about the universe, and we've been able to check all these planets, and there is no other life anywhere else in the world, what then?
Then it would be an awfully large universe for God to have made to only put us here.
Maybe it's the only safe place for us.
Why would God make such a big universe if he was only going to worry about us? Who was it for?
It's for us.
But we couldn't get to, like, you know, even the nearest galaxy over. Why put these planets in these? Why put 1 trillion planets in the nearest galaxy over if we could never get there, if they're all empty?
Because if maybe we're meant to make them into habitable places. He tells us in his word to be fruitful and multiply it, which would mean eventually we would multiply to a point where this planet couldn't sustain us. But we would probably have the means to make other planets habitable to sustain us.
So, look, if it's the case that our universe is empty, I think that like the whole universe is empty, not just like our local neighborhood, that definitely raises some questions. I don't think that it implies the existence of God, but what if, on the other hand, we find life in a few thousand years? What does that say?
And what if they believe in a God and they're like, yeah, the all of this was created?
Sure, I would say the same thing to them as I'm saying to you.
Someone. So I think it just, we're all trying to understand life and what it means, and we a lot of humans feel like there's something more than like that's why we're trying to ask the question, like, what happens after we die? Is there something that happens after
I agree.
we die?
A lot of humans, like, I agree. It may even
be more to
it
life.
may even be inbuilt into our psychology to yearn for something more, to believe in a higher power. That might even be the case, but it doesn't mean it's true. And it seems like there are a lot of questions that we used to require religion or faith to answer that we no longer do. And it looks like the origins of life is probably one of the last questions that we don't know the answer to in its entirety, that people are holding on to as a crutch to continue to maintain their belief in a higher power.
My belief in a higher power stems from what I have seen, and I have asked myself similar questions, similar to the one you were debating with the last guy, or at least the last guy I saw on the live. I don't know how much of a delay there is. But you were talking about the fires in Australia killing a bunch of people. And I've struggled with that question myself of like, if there is a God, why would he allow such terrible things? And we do have the choice, like free will is a thing. So, and I'm not saying
that doesn't really answer
natural, I'm not really saying that a natural occurring. Go ahead.
Look, what I said was merely that the reason why you brought up the origins of life is because this is probably like the last remaining vestige of the God of the Gaps. You know, 2,500 years ago, people didn't know how lightning worked. The ancient Greeks didn't know how lightning worked. So they're like, well, it must be thrown from the heavens by Zeus. And then we figured out how lightning works. So now we don't need Zeus anymore. It seems like the only reason why you brought up the origins of life is because that's the last remaining thing that we don't know the answer for. And so somehow you can fit your God into that gap. But it just doesn't seem like it's the case that fitting a God into that gap is any better of an explanation than just saying, I don't know, maybe chemistry. And beyond that, it seems like there are a lot of questions that we can have, but just because we don't have the answers, like, you know, why is there something rather than nothing? Or, you know, why is the universe this way instead of that way? It seems like having questions doesn't mean that you should assume the answer is God.
In the questions that I say the answer is God, I'm not assuming that the answer is God because I don't know. It's I've seen him answer time and time again, and so I'm pointing to what I know in my heart.
Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean by you've seen him answer?
So, like, I've literally prayed for certain things, and seen them come to be.
What kind of things, if you don't mind me asking?
So, actually, a little over a year ago, while I was in the UK, my dog ran off from the person who was watching him and was missing for 3 days. He ended up getting found, and on day, which is not like him. He has wandered off a couple of times before, but he's normally back within a couple hours. So for him to be gone for multiple days was very worrying, and I was immediately thinking the worst.
Yep, makes sense.
But I had already started forming a relationship with God at this point, and was like, Lord, if the 9 years that I had with him was all I had, thank you, because it was fantastic. It was he is the best gift I've ever had. He was a birthday present from my mom. But anyway, and so I just like handed it over to him. I was like, Lord, I don't know what your plan is for this, but like it's yours. And 2 days after that, he was found by a lady, and he had been hit by a car. She took him to the vet. He had no broken bones, no internal bleeding. But like the entire left front leg was basically stripped to the bone.
That's
the
rough.
first vet recommended amputation. The second vet recommended amputation because it was cheaper, but said
Ninja,
there
sorry
was
to
a
cut you
way
off, but I think I get the point, right? Your dog was returned to you and things were okay, right?
And he is completely healed. He didn't lose his leg. And the lady that found him, out of the kindness of her own heart, volunteered to cover the $15,000 of vet bills.
It's very kind. Look, so Ninja, I'm glad that that worked out for you. What about all of the people that like wish, or that not wish, that like pray their hearts out for their cancer to go away?
I've seen it go away. I've seen it go away in my own mother.
So for most of the people, their cancer goes away because of modern medicine. But like for the people who have it like really bad, like stage 4, and like it's, you know, modern medicine can't do anything, most of them just end up dying. Doesn't matter how hard they pray, right? So why is it that God would like save your dog, but like not save all of these people?
Because maybe it was time for those people to go home and spend eternity with him.
And maybe like, the woman just wanted to, maybe the woman was just being kind and there was no divine intervention at all.
Well,
I mean, we can speculate, but it doesn't seem like there's any way that you can tell that it was God's intervention that, you know, saved your dog, any more than I can tell that it was God's failure to intervene that led to, you know, stage 4 cancer patients dying.
I can see your point, but there is a reason for everything.
Well, that's the
like
belief anyway. But like,
I've also been through some very difficult times that were some horrendous circumstances that have now been turned into something that I can use for good.
Wait a minute.
Because I can help others through that situation. If
everything happens for a reason, then it seems like prayer does nothing.
No. Prayer is making sure that you are aligning yourself with his will.
So if God has his will and prayer you pray for something that is
a conversation with him.
Right. So God has his will and his will doesn't change, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you pray for something that is
actually
not
no,
in line...
his will has changed before. And even in the Bible, there are times that people have prayed and it has changed his heart. There was a moment where he was about to destroy an entire city, and a prophet was like, wait, no, if I go in there and I find 5,000 people that are willing to repent, will you spare it? And he says, yeah. And basically he whittles it all the way down to, if there was one person in there, would you spare it? And God goes, yeah. And so he goes in there and finds that one person, and so God spares the city. So it's not that his will doesn't change. It's that his will is always good.
You're talking about Sodom and Gomorrah, right?
Pleasing.
You're talking about Sodom and Gomorrah? Because that's not the Sodom story. The Sodom story is, it's Lot. Lot keeps asking, if I find even one person, who's good. I think it was Lot. Will you spare it? And then God says, yes, I will spare it. And then Lot doesn't find any good people. And so then he smites the city. Maybe that was Gomorrah. So like this is not an example of him changing his mind. But by the way, are you familiar with Numbers 23:19?
Not off the top of my head, but I will look it up real quick.
So I can read it for you if you want. Numbers 23:19 is states, God is not a human being that he should lie, or a mortal that he should change his mind. Has he promised and will he not do it? Has he spoken and will he not fulfill it? So this verse is just saying God does not change his mind.
What is the rest of the chapter saying?
We can read it, or we can pull it up if you want. I'm going to pull it up for you won't be able to see it, but other people will be able to see it.
I'm looking at it on my phone.
Okay.
I'm looking at it on my phone. So
yeah, so this is about this is the story about Balaam. This is so Balak and Balaam are talking to each other, and this is you know, one of them is the prophet, I guess. So Balak is the prophet. No, sorry, Balaam is the prophet. Balak is the king who told his prophet to go curse the Israelites or something like this, if I'm remembering the story correctly. And then Balaam says all of these things about God because he was inspired to say so. And then Balak says, don't curse them, or do not curse them at all and do not bless them. But Balaam says, did I not speak to you saying whatever the Lord says, this is what I must do? And so then Balaam goes and offers a blessing, right? So that's the story here. And one of the things that he says is that God doesn't change his mind. You there?
Yeah, I'm just reading through that section.
Okay.
And this was because I brought up that through prayer you can change his mind or change his will.
Yeah.
Okay. That point I will give you. He probably doesn't.
So it just seems like if you pray for something that's against his will, then it won't come true because God's not going to change his will. And if you pray for something that was in line with his will, then the prayer did nothing because it was going to happen anyway. So it seems like prayer doesn't do anything regardless.
The intention of prayer is not to get what you want, because what we want as humans is often flawed.
So then I don't know what
the intention of prayer should be, to align your heart with his will.
So how do you, so look, we started talking about this because you said that, you know, God had I think you used the word spoken to you or talked to you or told you that this is, that, you know, all of this, that he's real and that all of this is designed. I guess what I'm wondering is, like, how do you rule out that these are things that just happened and they were going to happen anyway, whether or not you believe, whether or not there is a God?
Because things like that don't just happen by chance.
Why not?
Not repeatedly, and not after having surrendered my life and given my life to Christ.
How often do you think a once in a billion thing happens on Earth? Every day? Or how many times a day do you think a once in a billion thing happens?
Well, there's 8 billion of us, so right. At least
once in a billion things happen 8 times a day on average. So yeah, I mean, like, these are the kinds of things that can just randomly happen sometimes. Rare things happen when you have a big enough world.
But you're not disproving either.
Look, the claim was not that this was definitely not God. You made the claim that you know that God is real because you have this relationship with him. And I'm just asking, look, it seems like it's kind of hard to establish that this was actually, like, a relationship that you established with God, or if this was just a thing that happened because it happened. And sometimes things happen that are unexpected.
If it was just a one-time thing, I might give it to random chance, but for it to happen continuously, time after time, like, is not normal. I am not that lucky.
Well, maybe you are.
And
I mean, maybe this is evidence that you are. I mean, look, it seems like that the same view that you're holding also would demand that it is the lack of relationship, perhaps, or like the disdain by God of a person, if a person has a whole bunch of bad things happen to them in a row. And so, surely you don't want to say that,
God
right?
doesn't have a disdain. God doesn't have a disdain for anyone, but He will let anyone make their own choices.
So,
and
when good things happen, it's when good things happen, it's God's fault, or God gets the credit. When bad things happen, it's the person's fault. It seems like it seems like you're kind of talking out both sides of your mouth here.
No. Well, that's not what I was trying to say. It's repeat the. Sorry, I'm on the spectrum, and
you're fine.
Keeping track of this
what I said is, look, so you said that there's like a whole bunch of good things that happen to you in a row, and like that you're just not that lucky, and so it must be God that's responsible. You know, that was the that, you know, those weren't your exact words, but that was the idea. And so like there are people for whom a whole bunch of bad things happen in a row. When that happens, it sounds like you don't give God the credit for that.
No. For when the bad stuff in my life happened to me, 99% of that was because of the choices I was making, and because I was choosing to live a life that I thought I wanted. So
let me give you an example without going into too much detail. February of 2026 was a really, really bad month for me, like exceedingly bad. Like I had a deal lined up to work with a company that I was really, really excited to work with, and then they ghosted me. I had a job that I thought I had a really, really good chance of getting, that somebody else just ended up getting instead. I found a mistake in my PhD dissertation, which is really annoying to fix. We know how to fix it, but it's really, really annoying. And so that puts a big burden on me. And then I had a serious medical concern that is life-changing, that just all happened suddenly in February of 2026. All of this at the same time. And generally speaking, probably none of them are really like decisions that I made. Some of them are based off of things that I did. But I don't think that you could say that like they're, you know, because I just wanted to do what I wanted to do or whatever. So is this because God doesn't like me? Or is this because, you know, like there's some extra thing? Is this all my fault? Like what's the claim here?
That there's probably a lesson to be learned.
A lesson to be learned in all of these things?
Yeah, that's been my experience with life.
Was it because I didn't pray hard enough?
No, because you're again misunderstanding the reason for prayer.
So this was part of his plan, though, right?
It could be.
Well, no, it must be. Do things happen that aren't according to God's plan?
I don't have the knowledge to answer that question.
Look, what I'm saying is that there are, and I'm doing okay. Like I'm mentally okay. Like, you know, you get over things. But what I'm saying is that it seems like when a string of good luck things happen, you give God credit. But when a string of bad luck things happen, you're just like, oh, well, maybe it was a lesson. Maybe there's a lesson here, and actually there's good stuff to come about. Like, you see how it's like kind of like
experience with life.
Two different things. Except that's just not the case, right? Sometimes bad things happen and there's nothing to be learned except things suck sometimes, right?
No, you can always learn something from any situation.
Okay. So, you know, when like the 22-year-old mom and her 3-year-old or 3-year-old child were sent to a gas chamber to be executed by the Nazis, and their lives ended, what was the lesson that they learned?
I can't answer that question.
I would say that they can't really learn any lessons because they're dead.
But people in the future can learn from them, correct?
So is what you're telling me is that sometimes God does cruel things to people as lessons for people in the future?
God didn't do those things.
Well, he allows those things to happen.
God's not the one
right?
that sentenced them. He allows humans to do what we choose to do.
Okay, so we can give another example. For example, when like the 8-year-old gets diagnosed with terminal brain cancer and then they die, which happens, it's pretty common. It's not that common, but it does happen. Clearly they don't learn anything because they're dead. But you're telling me that the suffering of that kid, which, you know, was no fault of the person, of the child themselves, right? Sometimes brain cancer just happens. The suffering of that kid is somehow okay because somebody else in the future might learn from it?
Depends on what you define as okay.
Is it good? Is there a lesson to be learned that makes it all worth it?
If eventually we can come to a cure for cancer, would that not be a good outcome?
I think that you would struggle to convince the mother of that child that it's okay that their child died because, you know, now we have one more sample in a eventual cure for cancer in 2 decades. I don't know, man. I just think that you'd have a hard time convincing anyone of that.
Yeah, you would. And I'm not saying that you should even try to convince that mom of that. That's where compassion comes in, and knowing when to use compassion. Is like, you wouldn't tell a grieving mother right after her child passes, oh, don't worry, like, we're gonna learn from this. But
that's what you believe, that it's okay because of that.
I believe any situation that is bad in the moment can be turned into good, yeah.
Okay. Well, look, man, I think that I appreciate the optimism. I think that if that's the view that you hold, either you are extremely, extremely good at maintaining your optimism in the face of defeat, or you just haven't had bad things happen to you. I hope that it's the former and not the latter.
I have had a lot of
then I'm glad for your sake that you think that they are good. So, that you think that there's good stuff to be learned. Ninja, I'm going to let you go because you've been on for a while, but thanks for being here.
No worries. Thank you.
What a conversation. I mean, that really took a turn. It's just like, it's really, really hard for someone to say, oh, well, you know, I've had all these good things happen to me, so it must be God. But when the bad things happen, you know, there's a plan. I don't know, man. It just doesn't seem, it doesn't jive. There was somebody who was, oh, well, let's read some super chats and then we can move on to our next guest. From Simeon Urchin with the $10, what's your opinion on the fine structure constant? It's one of the few arguments for fine tuning that I could see people going for. My favorite proposal is that it's constant for constants. I don't know what that means. The fine structure constant is like roughly 1 divided by 137. if it was, I mean, we could go look at like the amount of fine tuning that it has, but I think it's like plus or minus 10% and things would be different. But it's not, it doesn't seem like it's a huge amount of fine tuning. If your question is just like, what's the deal with fine tuning? My view is that I don't think that we have enough information to make the assertion that the universe is fine tuned. Now, L'Oreal Ashley just sent 10 Dr. Blitz gift memberships, which is enormous and very much appreciated. 10 people just got access to the emojis and to my debate notes, which are, you know, the personal notes that I use for these things, and that it's like the file that where I store all of my links and resources and arguments that I've thought of and counter arguments that I've thought of. It's where I store all of that stuff. And so now 10 more people have access to that. So big W for L'Oreal. Thank you so much. And if you want to get that and you didn't get the gift, it's like $4 or $5 a month. So consider it. From Whale Panties, which is a great name, by the way, with the $5, have you read Lamb, the Gospel According to Biff, Christ's Childhood Pal? Words cannot describe how funny / good it is. Also, sharks are awesome. I haven't, and sharks are awesome. Yeah, so the $4 or $5 a month, you can find that on YouTube. It is a YouTube membership thing. You can't find it on TikTok. I tried, but you can't send links to members on TikTok, so. From Christopher Sanford with the £5, but if I die ignorant, does that make my argument from ignorance valid? Are you okay? Yeah, look, I mean, there's a lot of arguments for ignorance that happen a lot. From Git Stanfield with the $5, how far is Voyager 2 from the solar system now? And what methods did the US use to speed up the probe? I don't know off the top of my head. But we haven't sped up the probe. We just sent it off really, really fast, and it's just been going ever since. From The Last Judge with the £5, hi Blitz, I'd like to make a copy of your debate notes for personal use, but it doesn't seem to be an option in Google Docs. Great work. Yeah, so I have disabled copying them. I forgot that I did this. I mentioned it last time that you could just make a copy. I've disabled copying them because I don't want them being distributed, right? And this is at least a, you know, a measure against that. Yeah, this is an unfortunate reality, but also, I think the only way that you can make a copy is if you are a editor or something, and then you would need editing permission. It's annoying, but you know. From John O. Ratcliffe with the $2, he is referencing Jeremiah 5:1. I don't remember what that was referencing. From A Stoic Master with the $10, Blitz, what happens when Pinocchio says my nose grows now? The universe implodes. From Skeet Sayer with the 5 Canuck bucks, this argument is obtuse. Before the 20th century, most scientists were God-fearing. They got that was how we understood reality because of the spark. Okay, well, most of them aren't now. From Solar Lion with the 7 Canuck bucks, when bad things happen to people repeatedly, it may be self-choices or results because of choices made by others. Everybody has the power of choice. Sure, and when good things happen to people repeatedly, you could say the same thing, right? But generally, we separate the things that happen to someone because of their choices and the things that happen to someone just because of sheer chance. Sometimes things happen because of sheer chance, like this guy's dog getting found. That happened because of sheer chance, at least in my view. And people getting diagnosed with like a random cancer, like when they're 8 years old in their brain, that also happens because of sheer chance. It's not a choice. From Solar Lion again with the 7 Canuck bucks, take a war, for example. Why would God allow war? Fact is, he doesn't, but the instigators of the conflict to have power of choice as much as you do. Well, God does allow it, right? If he didn't allow it, he would stop it. So he does allow it. From Skeet Sayer again with the 5 Canuck bucks, Trump supporters love him because he projects 1930s Germany. Hatred in your heart is a fulcrum for evil. That's true. From Skeet Sayer again, real Christianity is in the old slave towns in the Caribbean. They are not colored by racism. Maybe. I'm not familiar with those. From Rib Tickler with the £5, why would God leave me paralyzed from neck down for 33 years, destroying mine, my family, and my girlfriend's life? I should have died. It's a good question. It's a great question. From Fred Dan 6 Fly with the 50 Swedish kroners, Voyager accelerated with gravitational swing around gas giants. Right, that was part of the original trajectory. I don't think it's sped up since it has left the solar system though. From Skeet Sayer with the 5 Canuck bucks, are the fact that Voyager escaped the solar system a reason why 3i Atlas is already by Jupiter? Well, these seem unrelated. From Brady's with the $5, Athletes who win big in sports always thank God for winning, but they never thank him for losing. Good point. They never thank him for the lesson, right? From the last judge with the £5. Oh, sorry, I didn't know about the whole copying thing. You're right. There's a lot of negative implications. Completely understand. Thanks. Yeah, sorry about that. Maybe I can figure out a way to make that happen. But there's also like all of like the edit. There's only like 3 statuses. There's like viewer, there's editor, and then there's I don't know. I'd have to look into it more. And from Tracy Frazier with the $10 coming from TikTok. First impression of you, mind you. Gained a follower. Well, I appreciate that, Tracy. Welcome. Welcome to the cult of the lava lamp. No. And from Will with the $5, I'm really worried about vacuum decay. Should I be worried? No. If it happens, it'll happen before you know it. And so like there's nothing that you can do about it. You can't run it. You can't outrun it. So it'll either happen or it won't. And there's no use worrying about it. All right, let us bring up our next guest. We have a lot of guests on both YouTube and in both Discord and on TikTok. There was a guest who really wanted to come up. People on YouTube, do you guys remember the name of the guest who was really wanted to come up? Was it Elijah John? Or there was somebody who was saying, you know, Blitz would be destroyed by good arguments if only he heard them and let me up. Do you guys know what his name is? I'm asking YouTube because he was a YouTube commenter. It was Kyle Teeter. So which of you guys is Kyle Teeter? You guys know? If you're in the guest waiting room, please let me know if you are Kyle Teeter and I will bring you up. Let me know in like the guest waiting area chat. If none of you guys are Kyle Teeter, then I know that he's in the YouTube chat. I just wonder if he's joined the Discord chat. Okay, it doesn't look like any of them are Kyle Teeter, so I'm just gonna bring up a guest from TikTok then. Let's talk to Flying Brian. Yeah, he's probably gone.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Brian. How are you?
I got no complaints. Pretty good day
Glad to hear
so far.
it. I'm doing okay. Brian, do you believe in a god?
Yeah, I do. But I do subscribe to the idea that it's beyond knowing.
Why would you believe in something that you can't even in principle know anything about?
I think of it kind of this way, like when I say knowing, I don't mean about verifiability. I mean like understanding, comprehending. So like,
can you understand or comprehend anything about it?
Yeah, there's parts of it I can understand. So like to give an analogy, like the guidance that I give my dog, kind of funny, like God backwards, but the guidance I give my dog, he can't understand or comprehend like the fullness of the reasons for my direction, but he can understand parts of it. Like, oh, when he makes this noise, that means I sit down, you know, in whatever he would, you know.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, no, I understand.
Very Pavlovian. So.
Yeah. So what kinds of things do you think you can understand about this god of yours?
The love, you know, part of that, you know, people could dismiss it as optimism or hopefulness for meaning. But aside from, you know, other people's anecdotal stuff, it's like personal experience of guidance, you know, seeking, and, you know, am I open to the possibility that, that it could be just my own anthropomorphizing, like my own relationship with my psyche and stuff as something quasi-external, but that doesn't change that it's not what I believe. You know what I mean?
So why should I believe in this god that you believe in?
Have you ever heard of Pascal's Wager?
I have.
Okay, so I like parts of it, but I dislike the damnation and torment, because I push back on a lot of that scripturally. I think that a lot of the scriptural writings about, say, like the lake of fire and stuff goes back to other analogies of like a silversmith purifying. And the beauty of the analogy is that like that silver is not perfectly purified until the smith actually sees its own reflection in the metal, and it's like a flash moment that you have to pull it right then. So it's a beautiful metaphor of like, you know, if there's this loving guiding force, then it's putting us through tough times and that sucks, it really does, but it's in an effort for us to become the fullest, most loving people we can be.
So in your view, it's wise for me to, or that I should believe in the God that you believe in, because if I don't and God is real, I will be flash purified and then brought to heaven? No.
The analogy escapes the reasoning. Sorry for getting away from the thread, but it's really not like a should in the sense of there's a consequence like the traditional dichotomy. I think of it as a should, as more of like, think of it like a suggestion from maybe not a friend. You don't know me personally, at least very well yet, but as someone who's being friendly to say like, I would suggest trying this. I wouldn't force you, and I wouldn't suggest that, you know, like do it or else. But from my own experience, I found it very positive and helpful for me to grow as a loving person, but also to be able to accept and understand things.
I mean, like, look, like I can absolutely agree or grant that this has helped you become a better person, or has helped you, you know, come to peace with things. It's just not clear to me why, like, that should conclude. Sorry, I don't know why I can't talk. Just not clear to me why that should convince me that this God is real. No, it might even be the case that if I could somehow believe in it, if I could bring myself to believe in it, that it might improve my life. Maybe that's even true.
I
but
think
the question is how do you convince me to believe in it to begin with?
Oh, well, I think you don't necessarily at first. And that's a kind of a scary thing to admit, that maybe a lot of Christians or, you know, other faiths will be afraid to say. But, you know, when you're truly like going out on a limb with your heart and your, you know, like yourself, the truest version of yourself, being vulnerable, you're kind of knocking at the door, recognizing that maybe someone won't answer, you know? So I think that's kind of necessary to the process, in my opinion.
Well, what do you think what do you think these conversations are?
Well, like I said, there's different ways to look at it. Like some people would hear all of my experience in the fullness of expression, you know, if I had all the time to tell everything, and they would say, oh, well, he was very clearly just like creating a structure to understand how he related with even responses that were fabricated by my mind, you know? And while that may be true, and this is what I mean, like a lot of Christians are afraid to admit, like, you know, we don't know, you know, like we believe. I think that's what's more important than knowing. But like based on my experience, it contends with the feeling of like other self-created thoughts where I can feel and sense the source of them in my psyche.
Well, look, so my general view is that I try to just believe things that are true, or things that I at least have reason to think are true.
Yeah.
And so in absence of some sort of reason for thinking that it's true, that like there is this God that exists, I'm going to have a hard time believing it. And this isn't like a choice that I'm making. This is just totally a feature of my psychology, right? Like this is just the way I am, that like I'm very, you know, analytically minded. I've always been this way. Like I've always been a reasonably skeptical person. And so like if all you have to offer me is, you know, just try believing, like,
okay,
maybe that's compelling for other people. It just doesn't work for me. And I'm not saying that this is the fault of you.
Weak as an argument. I get you.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just doesn't do much for me.
Could I tell you about what made me start to humor it before I would say I believed it?
So I'm going to say no. And the reason I'm going to say no is for the same reason why I don't care when people tell me about their dreams, except my wife. I will always listen to my wife's dreams.
Okay.
Generally, like nobody else ever cares about your own dreams, except the person who has the dreams.
Fair.
And like when you tell someone else about these dreams that you had, like nobody cares. And similarly, other people's experiences are just generally very uncompelling.
I see. Okay. Then could I try a different tact and rather than try to compel, could I touch on a philosophical component that you were discussing with other people in the chat earlier about
Sure.
yeah, the problem of evil where like omnipotence meets omnibenevolence, right?
Yep.
I'm currently exploring a topic that I'm writing on where and forgive me if part of it's not fully fleshed out, but I think it's compelling, at least in this topic, is omnipotence, I think, may have been misunderstood, you know, and like there's this Greek kind of philosophical extrapolation that leads to it being expanded as an infinite concept, like can do anything, can do the impossible, you know, very
well, nobody's talking
personified.
about being able to do the impossible. We're just talking about there's nothing possible that God can't do.
Okay.
That's all it's meant by omnipotence.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. I'll have to formulate my thoughts more before pushing because I don't want to, you know, be disorganized about it. But I really appreciate your critiques. I even though, like I said, I believe these things, I like to approach them as honestly, academically as I can. And I mean it when I say I appreciate the insight.
Well, I appreciate you being here. Thanks for being here, Brian.
Thank you.
Guys, don't make fun of him for writing things. You can write things. Writing things is fine. All right, let me read some super chats, then we'll bring on our next guest. From Skeet Sayer with the 5 Canuck bucks. You do realize that 3i Atlas went from Sun orbit to Jupiter in 3 months. It's not orbiting Jupiter. It's just passing nearby Jupiter. From Eric S with the $5. Why did God not simply eat all of the smaller gods? No. Why did God not simply create human nature such that pleasant experiences would purify us? Why assign pain as the means of growth? That's a good question. And from the Last Judge with the £5. Sorry to hear you had such an unpleasant February. I'd offer advice, but that would be condescending and egotistic. I hope your life gets better. Well, I appreciate that. Me too. I'm doing my best. From Hunting Faith Pod with the $2. Thank you for the debate and being respectful. I do my best. That is one of the things that my mama taught me. All right, let us bring up our next guest. Let's bring up a guest from Discord. Let's bring up Aggro Mage. Aggro Mage, how's it going?
Hey, greetings. Good morning.
Howdy to you too. Aggro Mage, do you believe in a god?
Many gods and goddesses. I'm a polytheist.
Okay. So, look, I'm not. Why should I believe in these many gods of yours? And are any of these gods distinguishable in a meaningful sense from a super powerful alien?
Probably not the alien thing. I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility. I'm not as dogmatic as most people. However, I just protest the idea of an all-powerful, all-seeing, all omnipotent presence.
Okay, well, I don't think that such a thing exists either. So we're in agreement there.
But I think it's more likely, you know, the ancients talk of this primordial ocean all the time. The ancients knew this before Christianity, before everything else. You know, the Hindus talk of Brahma, the Norse talk of Ginnunga Gap, the great gap between everything. It's already a concept. And this primordial ocean of matter pre-exists everything. Something always exists.
Well, so there's really no rely on like the ancients for knowing anything about cosmology, because you know they didn't even know that the Earth went around the sun.
But we know that now that there's just matter anyways. Like we know there was a Big Bang. We know there was matter existing in the universe beforehand.
Right. But my point is,
I mean, I'm not saying science is vindicating it. I'm saying that there is an ancient insight that, oh yeah, they were already supposing all this stuff.
Look,
You know what
so
I mean?
lots of people,
There's already been debates about it.
lots of people have had lots of thoughts, and some of those thoughts end up being right. But that doesn't mean that they were right for the right reason, and it doesn't mean that their belief in it, that their belief was justified. It just means that they were lucky. Like, that happens sometimes, right? Like, for example, what would be a good kind of like non-biased, non-religious example? So so there was a guy named John Mitchell in the 1700s who, using Newtonian gravity, he came to the conclusion that there could be, and in fact likely are, stars. He called them black stars. There are stars that are so heavy that the light can't run away from them. And these would be, as we know them today, black holes. He came up with this idea, 150 years before we even had the general theory of relativity by Einstein, which led to the development and later discovery of black holes. That doesn't mean that his belief or his view was justified and that we should then, agree with or appeal to the other things that he believed in because he got this thing right, kind of by accident.
But so you're saying we cannot say, even though we've proven so far with our modern science, you're saying that, oh, it doesn't matter that their hypothesis was correct, no?
What I'm saying is that
their hypothesis
they may have
was
gotten
correct.
the answer right, but that doesn't mean that we should assume the other things that they believed are also right because they got this thing right.
Okay, well, that's not what I'm hinging my argument on. I'm just saying, leading into this, right, that the ancients were right about such
kind of by
things
accident,
as,
but they were.
Either way, well, the guy in the 1700s was wrong by accident, but here we are. Science is now it's actually true, right? So science can prove the ancients right.
Sure.
Is what you're saying.
What I'm saying is that it can be the case that people have beliefs that are not justified, but those beliefs end up pointing at something true anyway.
Right. So there is, instead of the one truth, like the truth that, a lot of the Abrahamists talk about, the way you explain the multiplicity of experiences around the world is that there is a multiplicity of truths.
Okay,
and
what does this have to do with the many gods existing?
That's what I'm getting to. They represent manifestations of the multiplicity of truths.
The many gods are manifestations of the multiplicity of truths?
Yeah. They're fundamental truths.
I don't know what that means. I take it that truth is not a thing that exists, but is rather a property of certain concepts that we hold in our mind. So I don't know what you mean by, like, there are these actual things that actually exist as manifestations of things that only exist in our mind.
Well, manifestation is something that you can tap into that is divine. I think that is a part of humanity, that we have this divine spark that we can tap into. Not all the time. Some people can try to tap into and find nothing, but there are ways, and there are formulas and ways for us to reach that by contemplation of the divine, by emulation of these beings.
So why should I think that these beings exist?
Because, have you ever gotten into a flow state?
Sure. Oh, where'd he go? Where'd he go? Did he just get into a flow state? Where'd he go? Did somebody somebody said I manifested him leaving. We'll give him a minute if he comes back. This is the second time it happened. You know, if I had a nickel for every time this happened, I'd only have 2 nickels, but it's weird that it happened twice. Is that how the bit goes? Okay. All right, looks like he's not coming back. Let's bring up our next guest. Let us talk to Ian, the one, the only Ian on TikTok. Ian, how's it going?
I'm so glad you finally let me up.
Welcome.
It's like an hour ago. Cool. Well, so really quick, why are you an atheist?
Well, because I haven't really been given good reason to believe in a god. I haven't really seen good reason, good evidence, good argumentation. So why should I believe in the god that you believe in?
Well, let's see. Do you believe
also,
that anything could happen to you?
Which god is it that you believe in? Just so then I don't make any bad assumptions about you.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm kind of a pantheist. I also sort of consider myself an atheist because, well, I believe in a higher power. Not a higher power necessarily, but I believe in like the immensity of the universe, and I believe in magic.
I believe that the universe is immense. I don't believe in magic though.
So, what confines you to the realm of hard science?
I don't know what you mean by confines me. I mean, I do mathematics a lot. That's not hard science. I talk about philosophy a lot. That's not hard science. I am happy to engage with linguistics and history and all sorts of lovely things.
What is the end game of human evolution? And
I don't think that there is one.
As an atheist, is there still a way to spiritually progress? I mean, grow.
I don't believe in spiritual stuff.
Gotcha. Wow. And it seems very lonely and closed off.
Not lonely really at all.
What makes your reality magical? What makes your reality?
I don't know what you mean by magical.
Fulfilling?
Like I told you, I don't think that magic is real.
Fulfilling, surprising, fantastic, etc. What makes reality that way for you?
Doing different things. There's a lot. But look, it doesn't seem like you're really here to talk about the topic, so I'm gonna let you go. Sorry you waited an hour. I know that that's disappointing. Like this live stream is not. If you're a pantheist, come interview an atheist. Like, that's not what the live stream is. All right, let's bring up our next guest, Opie, the CFH. Opie, how's it going? Opie? Opie?
Sorry, I had my mic muted. I'm sorry
You're
about
good.
that.
Opie, do you believe in a god?
Yeah, Jesus Christ is the one true king.
Okay. Why should I believe that Jesus Christ is God?
You seem like a man of science, and I respect that because as a born-again Christian myself, I'm a firm believer in science.
Oh, cool. I'm glad that we agree on that.
So before I start on my point, I want to say, you said, someone brought up earlier that praying to God would heal them. I believe every advancement that man has ever made is from someone's prayer, because who is to say that just because a man discovered the cure does not mean that God gave him the wisdom and the insight to discover that?
How do you know that somebody prayed for every discovery, though?
I'm not saying someone did, but I'm saying someone could. I don't speak in absolutes, because the only absolute I believe in is Christ.
Didn't you just say, who am I to say that? Who am I to say that not every discovery was, like, it seems like you did just say that, but that's fine. You didn't mean it. That's okay.
Who am I to say that, though? I don't know that. That's not an absolute. That's just me saying I don't know everything.
Yeah, me neither. I'm glad that we're in agreement.
Okay, so I want to start off first with can you tell me what the law of the conservation of mass is?
it's a law in chemistry. It's not a law of physics. Just that the total mass of a, I mean, it's not even really a law in chemistry, but it's an approximate law in chemistry, that the total mass of a reaction is preserved throughout the reaction.
No. The first part. You were correct on that assumption, but what did Antonio Lavoisier say in 1785?
Yeah, that the total mass of a reaction is conserved in the reaction.
Well, matter cannot be created nor destroyed.
Okay, sure. But that's not conservation of mass, first of all. Second of all, that's just not true.
It's the law of the conservation of mass. It's one of the states.
So you can absolutely conserve mass, but also create new matter, or destroy matter and still conserve mass.
Sure. I just want to Google it real quick.
Yeah, we do this in particle colliders all the time.
Okay, well, fine. So, but yeah, I'm just using that to illustrate my first point.
Okay, what's your first point?
After that, that matter cannot be created nor destroyed.
Well, I mean,
so therefore,
except that's strictly false, but fine.
I'm using this as I'm using this as the starting point because many people believe.
But if your starting point's wrong, then
well, many people believe the Big Bang, correct? Is that's how it started?
No, I don't think that's how it started.
Well, a lot of people do. That's the general consensus among many times. Well,
no, it's not.
Just for interest, where do you believe it started then?
I don't think that the universe had I don't think that there was ever nothing, if that helps.
Okay, fair enough. And that is correct because I truly believe God is omnipotent with no beginning, and that still blows my mind.
Okay.
That's one thing I've always found to be very interesting. So let's just go based off of the Big Bang Theory, shall we? Since quite a few people do believe it, if it's not even the still the census for people today, fine, but it's still one of the biggest beliefs that people have. Can we agree to that?
Like, do you mean like scientists believe this, or that like regular people believe this?
Most people believe the Big Bang is.
Well, I don't really care what regular people think about cosmology. Well, like regular people are wrong about a lot of things.
On what science believes. What does science believe now then?
Because like actually, so the seeming scientific consensus is that the Big Bang is a description of the universe being in a hot, dense state about 13.8 billion years ago, and it says nothing about whether or not the universe had a beginning.
Okay, so let me ask you then: doesn't a force have to act upon something to cause that to occur, though?
Sure.
So what caused something to come out of nothing?
The Big Bang isn't about something coming out of nothing.
Well, how did it get there then? That's what I just want.
Well, my view is that there was stuff before.
Okay. So where did that come from, though?
Stuff before that.
But that has to have a starting point.
Why does it have to have a starting point?
Because something has to have a starting point.
Why?
That's the thing. I can't explain.
So then why should I believe it? If you like, it just sounds like you're just asserting this, but you don't have any explanation for why it's true.
No, I'm getting there. Trust me.
Then why'd you say that you can't explain it?
Well, because something not having a beginning, that's still one of the biggest questions in all of life. And most Christians come to accept the fact that God is outside of our perceived time. He's outside of our perceived spectrum. We can't understand just how truly magnificent he is because, according to him, he holds time in his hand. Therefore, he is outside of time, meaning he created everything that starts there.
But why should I think that God exists?
Well, because I'm going to use Jesus outside the Bible completely.
Okay.
To prove my point.
So yeah, make your point.
Are you good on history?
I don't know. I'm decent, I guess.
Okay. So, are you familiar with the Journal of the American Medical Association?
I haven't read it, but yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Okay. So, one of the biggest things they've ever questioned was how did crucifixion work and how would it have killed somebody? That's one thing they really studied, as many people have tried to disprove the crucifixion of Christ. The Journal of the American Medical Association.
Journals don't study things.
Well, the Journal of the American Medical has it listed that back in the 1970s, it was proven without a doubt that Christ did indeed die on the cross. And due to historical evidence, we do know that because when Christ was killed on the cross, he was stabbed with the spear, and where he was stabbed, that would have caused him to bleed water and blood from the pericardial sac around his heart.
So my understanding is
the pleural cavity around his lungs.
My understanding is that the standard behavior for Romans was that during crucifixion they wouldn't do the whole stabby thing. They would just leave you up there and then you would die eventually, and then they would just leave you up there, and you would just rot.
Well, that's how they would check you. They would check you with the spirit of the heart.
I'm not familiar with any. I'm not familiar of any like historical documents that actually say that that's a thing that the Romans did.
That's how the Romans did do it. That was
do you have a historical document that demonstrates this?
They're not on me specifically, but there are enough accounts that did occur.
Can you give me an example, and I can go find it?
Sure. Give me a second. I'll look it up for you.
Sure. I mean, I imagine that you're on a computer, so.
No, I'm actually on my phone.
Okay. Well, you can still, you can still talk on Discord while, looking something up. I mean, like, why would they even need to check if somebody's dead? What does that achieve for the Romans?
Because the Romans that was their form of punishment. Therefore, that was how they executed people. They didn't leave people up there to rot. They actually took them down.
That's historically attested. They did leave people up there to rot. That's absolutely what the Romans did.
So what you can do is look up the Nicodemus. Look up the Gospel of Nicodemus. He was the Pharisee who challenged Christ in the temple and failed, and actually converted his life to Christianity after.
So the Gospel of Nicodemus. Just Googling
Nicodemus
this.
is not in the Bible.
You're right. It's not. It also comes from hundreds of years after Jesus. So why should we think that this is has anything true about what happened?
Well, if you want to go off the earliest known dates of recordings of Christ's death on the crucifixion, the earliest stuff they found was in Egypt, roughly 40 to 50 years after.
I agree that Jesus was probably crucified. The question is whether or not he was stabbed. The question is whether or not he was taken off the cross and put into a tomb.
He was stabbed, because if you read the Bible, that's where they found the water.
I agree, that's what the Bible says, but historically, Romans, I don't see any evidence of Romans actually doing that.
It's very well documented. Hold on, I'll find another one.
Find me, if it's very well documented, find me the documents.
Hold on, I'm still pulling up multiple sources. Okay, so according. Okay, let me make sure I got this right. According to the National Institute for Health, the reason the Romans did in fact stab Jesus was because of the Sabbath, and the Jews did not want.
National Institute for Health. It sounds like this is a health thing, not a historical source.
This is just what I have. This is the source I'm looking at.
So where are the historical sources?
Well, I don't have the official historical sources, but I'm using data that I have at my disposal just to answer your question.
So if you're trying to provide historical evidence that something is true, and then you cite the National Institute for Health, which I imagine you're looking at the same thing I'm looking at, which is actually not the National Institute of Health. It's from the South African Medical Journal. It's just hosted on PubMed.
Nope.
Because you probably did the same Googling that I did. This is a claim that's published in the South African Medical Journal, and it doesn't seem to give any sort of I'm not seeing any sort of references that actually back up this historical claim.
No, that's not what I'm looking at.
Okay, so what are you looking at?
I'm just looking at
what's the name of the paper?
The National Library of Medicine.
What's the name of the paper?
All I'm saying is it's the National Library of Medicine, the
That's
historical
not a
and
paper
pathology
name.
of the crucifixion.
The history and pathology of crucifixion?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's literally the paper that I just cited. It was published in the South African Medical Journal. It's hosted on PubMed, but it was published in the South African Medical Journal. This is a medical article that has a claim at the end of its abstract. I knew that we were looking at the same thing, by the way, and it doesn't seem to cite that claim. And it's not a historical source either.
All I know is the fact that Jesus was stabbed, and you cannot survive a wound.
You keep saying all I know is, but how do you know it?
Because it's the faith-driven narrative. That's the thing.
So you're not. So what do you take knowledge to be?
If you want to move off that part, we can.
Sure.
But now I want you to answer that.
We can go ahead and change topics now that that's been thoroughly dismantled.
How come then? How come if we're looking up these sources and people try to say they want accurate dating, to go back closer to the crucifixion of Christ and his return, then how come we have a bunch of sources that show us outside the Bible itself that Christ did in fact resurrect? And there's over 1,500 confirmed sources, people who aren't even Christians, that say they saw him after his death. How can you explain that?
So what are, sorry, this is news to me. What are the sources, the extra biblical sources from people who claim to have seen
the Bible?
Yeah, that's what extra biblical means. Who are these sources of these non-Christians who claim to have seen Jesus after death? Can you give me one?
I'm looking. Hold on. I know there's plenty. I have a lot of stuff here. I want to find a good one for you.
Because you said that there's 1,500 confirmed sources, so I'm surprised I haven't heard of any of these, considering I've spoken with a lot of Christians.
Well, like I said, I'm trying to find you a really good one.
Please do. I'm familiar with Josephus, who is a Jew, but Josephus never said that he saw Jesus rise from the dead. I'm familiar with Tacitus, who mentions Jesus, but Tacitus never mentions Jesus being risen from the dead. There's one other historical source that's often named, but I can't remember what it's called.
Well, a very good one is the agnostic of Antioch. That's a good one.
Sorry, the what? Of what? Do you spell it?
The Ignatius of Antioch.
So you mean Ignatius of Antioch? Okay, let's look up Ignatius of Antioch. Okay,
that's
so what's the source called? Because this is like a guy. So like,
he was a writer.
Was there a particular thing that he wrote, or
he was a Christian writer, roughly 35, when Jesus is believed to have died around the year 33. In all his information outside the Bible.
Wait. So what did he write?
Pretty accurate. Hold on, I'll look it up for you, man.
This is just like a guy. So like I'm just not.
I understand.
Are you referring to like the epistles?
No, he wasn't an apostle. No. He wrote many letters.
The epistles, like to be clear, like
go ahead.
Like the epistle of Ignatius to the Ephesians, for example, was Ignatius of Antioch. At least that's who it's attested to.
All I'm saying is his work is literally right there. He was not an apostle. He was not aligned with Christ in any way. His letter.
Which work?
So he was a Christian writer.
No. But what's the work? What's the work that's making?
I don't know
that
what
you're
it's
referring
called,
to?
but he's one. I don't know what it's called, but all I know is he's actually a source.
So you're just like, there's this guy.
No, he's a source outside the Bible that many Christians go to.
So you're like, there's this guy, but you can't point to there's this guy who claimed that he saw Jesus risen from the dead, but you can't point to where he made that claim. Sounds like I don't really have much.
Hold on.
Go off of, right?
Yeah, I'm not doing a very good job of explaining this.
So
it
looks like Ignatius wrote his stuff. So I guess that there are some authentic things that Ignatius wrote. And he wrote his stuff in like 75 years-ish after Jesus would have been executed.
Yeah, that's the timetable that people believe. It was anywhere from...
So how old... And then, depending on who you trust, he died like, 25, 30 years after that. So he died like 100, 105 years after Jesus was executed?
Roughly.
So how are you telling me that he saw Jesus risen from the dead?
He's one of the sources that gathered information to do it.
So I'm pretty sure that you made the claim that there are confirmed sources of people who saw Jesus rise from the dead. But this isn't a confirmed source of that. He wouldn't have been somebody who saw Jesus rise from the dead, right?
Yes.
So he's not the kind of source that you were referring to. He's not somebody who saw Jesus rise from the dead.
Correct.
In fact, you will find that far be it from there being 1,500 confirmed sources of people who saw Jesus rise from the dead, you will find that there are none.
That's not true. There's plenty. Lee Strobel explains it a lot better than I can. I'm trying to remember what Lee Strobel said, but I cannot find it. He explained it a lot better.
Kind of weird that you can't find the claims that Lee Strobel made.
I can find them. I just got to do a lot of digging.
If there's 1,500 of them, it shouldn't be too hard to find.
Okay, I'm looking right now.
Like 1,500 would be like so many. We should be tripping over the testimonies of people from the 1st century saying, I saw Jesus rise from the dead personally, and my name is.
So here are some of Strobel's best accounts. The earliest cathedral reports. Strobel points to reports preserved by the Apostle Paul that scholars date within months of Jesus' death, which he argues is too early for him to have developed.
Sorry, what texts are these?
That's 1 Corinthians, but that's in the Bible.
Okay, so that's in the Bible, yeah. I thought there were 1,500 accounts outside of the Bible.
Both within and outside the New Testament that collaborate with the disciples' convictions and that they encountered resurrected Jesus.
Okay, so that's different from your claim. Your claim was that there are 1,500 extra biblical sources that say that they saw Jesus risen from the dead. Your claim was not that there are like extra biblical sources that agree with some of the views of the apostles as laid out in the Bible. That's not what you said. Like, yeah, there were a lot of Christians who existed after Jesus was crucified, and a lot of Christians would have written things, and not all of the things that Christians wrote wound up in the Bible. But I think you're going to have a hard time finding somebody who actually makes the claim that they witnessed it and it's an extra biblical source.
Well, we can agree to disagree. I don't
This
exactly
isn't an
have my
agree to
stuff
disagree.
down.
You just haven't found any. This is you made a claim and you were wrong about it.
That's why I said I agree to disagree, because I don't know I'm wrong. It's literally, I know that the fact Jesus was stabbed by the Romans for something he could not survive.
But you didn't find any source for that. You didn't find any evidence that happened.
But then how can you explain this? Why was a woman's word taken so seriously then, that the fact that Jesus was risen, when women's words back then meant nothing?
That's a big claim. I don't know why you would say that women's word meant nothing.
Women's words did mean nothing back in those times. That's not me talking. That's
women in Jewish law, women could testify. Their testimony could be taken seriously in court.
But their words meant almost next to nothing.
No, you just needed 2 women rather than 1. Not next to nothing. It's half, actually. And, you know, it would then make sense why they would say that there were 2 women who were at the empty tomb, right?
But remember, women's words back then really did mean nothing. They were
allowed to talk.
You keep saying
that it's false. That's strictly false. Women's testimony could be used in court under Jewish law. It's just not true that women's words meant nothing. I don't know where people get this claim. They just think that like women were like, you know, as low as like they weren't. Obviously.
According to Jewish law, women were generally confined to private domestic spheres, and their testimonies were considered inferior or unreliable compared to that of a man.
Yeah, okay. What's the source for that claim?
That is the role of women in the Bible, Jews for Jesus. What I looked up.
Ah, okay. So your source is a bunch of Christians?
No, Jews.
Jews for Jesus are Christians.
They're still Jewish. They're going off their old. They're talking about their old.
No, they're not Jewish. That's the point. They're
going
Christians.
off their old law. Just because they've converted to Christianity, but they were Jewish. I'm just going based off what I know.
No, in fact, many Jews for Jesus are not Jewish. They weren't born Jewish. They weren't born into Jewish families. Jews for Jesus are Christians. So your source is a Christian source.
I know what I know about Jewish law. And back then, women's words did not mean anything in the ancient world.
Find me the Jewish law that says that, and don't appeal to a Christian source. I feel like I'm debating against ChatGPT. Am I debating against ChatGPT?
No, you're not. Don't use
Okay.
ChatGPT. That stuff's garbage. If you can't look up things yourself,
Are you using Grok?
No, I don't use AI.
Okay. Cool.
AI wrote your brain. I'd rather look things up for myself, and if I'm wrong,
right.
I'll
So then what's the Jewish law that makes this claim?
According to the sources in the Talmud and the Mishra, contains several discussions that reflect on the patriarchal structure
Where are you
in which
reading
many
this?
cases treated women. This is just a simple Google search. The Talmud and the Mishra contain several discussions that reflect
I know. What's the source here?
This just says ancient Jewish law in which women's words mean less than or
so
nothing.
So are you using the AI overview?
I'm using the Talmud. I'll look up the Talmud. I'll use that.
I'm familiar with the Talmud, but it sounds like you just read the AI overview. I thought you don't use AI.
I'm not using AI. I'm going off sources that I find there, and then I'm reading it.
So you weren't reading the Talmud. You were reading AI.
No, I'm looking up the Talmud right now. I'm going off what that
what you were
said,
just reading was AI.
No, I wasn't reading the AI.
Okay, so then where were you reading it? All right, he's done. He's done. The level of dishonesty, the awkward silences, he's done. But hello, YouTube. I'm pretty sure he was just using not ChatGPT, like Google's AI the entire time. And by the way, what is true is that in cases of criminal law, women were forbidden from testifying. However, apparently their testimony could be used in cases they were generally forbidden from testifying. However, in cases where no male testimony was available, women's testimony was acceptable. But we weren't even talking about like a criminal court case here, right? We were talking about just like what people said. Yeah, he was probably using Gemini. Anyway, let us pull up our next guest. This one from TikTok. Let's talk to Carson. Carson. Carson? Carson? Can you hear me, Carson? Carson? All right, seems like Carson's not coming. All right, let's bring up a guest from Discord. Let's talk to Hurricane Ditka. Hurricane, how's it going? You have to unmute yourself, by the way, in Discord. Hurricane. Bro is a Wish version of that other guy? What other guy? You mean Ian, my buddy? The guy that I've been... Hurricane, how's it going?
Good. All right, sorry about that. I was having a hard time getting my microphone working there.
You're all good. Hurricane, do you believe in God?
Undecided.
Okay. So this live stream, if you're undecided, how do you expect to convince me?
So, well, all right. I don't know about convincing. Here's where I get hung up. And this is just, so like the guy earlier who was, I think, talking about the law, one of the laws of thermodynamics, but he was thinking it applied to matter instead of energy or whatever. But it's not so much where did the universe come from, but how? Like how does existence even? How is there even an existence for which the universe would exist in? You know,
great question.
Without,
I don't think that anybody knows the answer.
Right. So, do you have a plausible explanation? Because that's, you know, I've tried to reason my way through, you know, belief in God or whatever.
I don't think that there was ever nothing. So I think that there being nothing is impossible. Hence, there has to be something. That's my view.
Okay. Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is more of a how than when.
I'm not talking about a when. I'm talking about a how. The how is that there is no other way it could have been. There had to be a universe.
There had to be a universe?
There had to be something. Because if there wasn't something, then you'd have nothing, and nothing is not possible, so you must have something.
Well, fair enough. It just seems, well, so, okay. That's it right there. That's where my mind kind of hits the ceiling and goes, it doesn't make sense to me that there is an existence at all without something that we don't understand behind it.
Okay, but that doesn't really have much to do with the God.
You're right. That's not proof, and I'm sorry if I'm wasting.
It's not even not proof. It just doesn't really have much to do with the God. But look, Hurricane, I am going to let you go because it seems like that we don't have a whole lot to disagree on. So I'm going to bring on another guest. But thanks for being here. Now, before I bring up the next guest, I should read some super chats and cash apps and things like this. Because we have $20 from Shay for my pre-order for my, quote, chemistry in a skin bag shirt. That's a good one. Maybe I should make that one into a shirt. And then from Grimlock for hydrate, $10 from Grimlock. I'm in production today. Stay safe. Well, thank you, Grimlock. Grimlock always reminded me to hydrate. Much appreciated. Let me make sure I didn't miss any super chats, and we'll bring up our next guest. From John O. Ratcliffe with the $2. Opie on Discord wants to talk science. He didn't really want to talk science, it sounds like. Sounds like he wanted to talk about, myth. From Dr. Fudge with the $5. If I remember correctly, women did burial prep according to tradition, so it would actually be more obviously fake if it wasn't women who checked the tomb in the story. That's a good point. I don't know the historicity of that, but if that's true, then that's a good point. Okay, let's bring up our next guest. I don't know. It doesn't really order people. All right, let's bring up Taste the World. Taste the World, can you hear me? You gotta make sure to unmute yourself.
Yep. What's up?
Howdy. Taste the World, do you believe in God?
Yes, I do.
I'm gonna take it from your username, who, everybody else who's watching, you can't see it. Your username has crosses in it, so I'm gonna assume that you're a Christian?
Yeah.
Okay, so, why should I be a Christian?
So, I kind of came here to, well, first of all, what I like what you're doing. You are somebody who peacefully debates and you don't insult people. Just unrelated, but I love that. You're
appreciate that.
Doing a positive thing. But what I would I'm not informed enough on historic things, but I just like two points that you brought up on other conversations that I would just like to pick your brain about a little bit here.
Okay, but so the question really is there a good reason for why I should be a Christian?
I was gonna, there was a guy on here before and you were talking about morals. I think it was almost 2 hours ago. It was a long time ago.
Yeah,
you were talking about morals.
Mm-hmm.
And my question with that one is, with morals, is how can you say that something's good? How can you say murder is bad? How can you say that's bad if you don't have anything to base it off of? If you think everything is just random stuff, why is something bad? What makes that bad for you without, believing in a God?
Yeah, I mean, in my view, the way that we come to being able to make judgments like good and bad or evil and virtuous and all these things is just whether or not they align with values that we hold. So when I am looking at something that happened in the world, I look at it through the lens of my own experiences and my own psychology and things like this and the values that I have. And when I see things that are in direct contradiction with my values, I say that's bad. Or if it's really, really egregiously in contradiction with my values, I say that's evil. And if something is in alignment with my values, I'm like, that's good. And that's how I make judgments.
But how would you get those values is kind of the question.
I think the values come from, several different ways. I think that some of them may be kind of primordial in that we evolved to have some of these responses innately, instinctually. I think that some of the values come from the long tradition of societies that we live in and that we have come before us. We you know, we have civilization originating like 10,000, 12,000 years ago or something like this. And then through the development of, you know, societies and laws and stuff, we've kind of passed down these things across generations and millennia. I think that some of these values can come from personal experiences that I've had, things that, you know, things that happen to me and I don't like them, so I can understand why other people wouldn't like them, and so I could kind of empathize with them. I think that some of these things can be taught directly by parents or teachers. So yeah, I mean, I think that the values come from a lot of different places.
But when you're following things like, you know, tradition, and you said you're someone who's based on like, you know, like science and stuff, which is totally understandable. But when you're saying it comes from tradition, would that not also, your values not also come from, you know, like religion? Because a lot of culture and law is built off of religion. So
Yeah,
wouldn't
sure.
your values
Absolutely.
also not be
Absolutely.
built
Some
off
of them
religion?
some of them can come from religious traditions. Absolutely. I'm sure that that's the case. I don't, they, at least if you live in the United States, we are inundated with Christianity. And so the cultural context that we live in is very much influenced by especially like Western Christian philosophy. So absolutely, some of that can come from that philosophical tradition.
Okay, so that was something that, okay, so that makes more sense to me, something I was confused on. And I have one more thing that I think someone just got wrong and they didn't know how to explain it. But he was talking about, you were talking about why does God make bad things happen to people? Like, why would he give a child like cancer and they would die?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Or rather, why would he allow this to happen? Or why would he make the world in such a way that this is the kind of thing that does happen?
So from understanding of like the Bible is that you know about Adam and Eve, obviously, like original sin, that stuff?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so with like original sin, humans, you know, Eve took a bite by the apple. We're now all, you know, have a original sin. So because as humans we are naturally sinful, evil, not evil but sinful, because we have, God gives us the option to choose. If he didn't let us choose, we wouldn't love God, because forced love is not love. So
this seems unrelated to the kids having brain cancer.
So yeah, so it goes back to like us free will. That is a consequence of us having free will.
Can you walk me through what free choice was made to get the kid to have brain cancer?
It's just what happens with when humans, you know, are sinful. Because we are all sinful.
How does, like, okay, so let's imagine that humans are sinful, and like some guy, I don't know, 100 years ago, he like stole a loaf of bread or something. How does that mean that like some kid 100 years later is gonna have brain cancer? How does the sin lead to the brain cancer?
It doesn't directly lead to it, but
so then what causes the brain cancer?
Because of free choice, and you know,
where's the choice involved in the brain cancer?
There's no choice in it, but that is a consequence. It has nothing to do with free will. That is a consequence of all of us having, you know, being against or sinful against God and having our free choice.
How
and
is
choosing to do bad with it?
Like, consequences are usually like tied to the actions, right? So like if I, you know, if I stole a candy bar, then one of my consequences might be something like, I don't know, I have to pay a fine and do 30 days of community service. And that is the consequence. That is the punishment. The sentence, if you will. How is having free will related to getting brain cancer?
Because we use our free will for sin.
What does the sin have to do with brain cancer?
In the sense that because we are sinful, bad things happen to people.
So like if a guy in, I don't know, Vietnam is sinful, that can make the baby get brain cancer?
Not specifically one person committing a sin, but us as people who always sin it's just a punishment, and it's not like
who set
it's
that
not
punishment?
fair. God is not always super fair.
You'd say,
on
so you'd say he's not
items,
just?
Because
that's what fair means.
So hold on. It's that's a good point.
Because in fact, in Deuteronomy 32 verse 4, it says, "He is the rock, his works are perfect, and all his ways are just." So, in fact, it seems like God has to be fair in all of his ways.
I don't know what to say about that, brother. You got me on this one.
I mean, you should really think about it. Like, God set the rules for all of this, right? Like, God set God did all of this. He made the universe exactly the way it is. And so God made it so that if Eve ate this apple, that 1,000 or 5,000 years from then, kids would get brain cancer. Why would he make it that those two things are related to each other? Why would he choose to make it so that there are these consequences for these actions? Why not make the consequences different, less bad?
I don't know. Life is unfair, but so I'm having a hard time
who
with this.
set up life?
But things like kind of, like the devil and evil are kind of also a play in this where they have free choice and have made people do bad things.
Why did
and have made bad things.
Why did God allow the devil to have power here?
Because he had free will too.
You don't need to have power in order to have free will.
You have to have some sort of power to have free will.
He could have given the devil the amount of power that humans have.
He was Satan was an angel, right?
Yeah, and who made the angels?
God, which he gave them free will too.
Yeah, and he could have and who gave them the amount of power that they have?
God, yeah.
So God could have given them a different amount of power. Right?
He could have, but he didn't.
He could have changed the amount of power that they have. He could have changed the amount of power that the devil had.
He could, yeah.
So it didn't have to be the case that the devil had the power to make life miserable for us.
It didn't have to, no. But that's,
But God let it be that way.
Yeah, he did.
Even though God loves us.
He can love you while you do bad. That's the thing. He'll always
No, but it's the devil doing bad, right? The devil has the power, and the devil is. I mean, it's the devil's fault that Eve sinned in the first place, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the devil's fault that all of this bad stuff happened.
Mm-hmm.
So God didn't have to let that happen. He didn't have to let the snake into the garden.
Because he lets, he lets us have the choice. The devil also had the choice, and he was okay, his choice, his consequences is what happened, and is what is happening to the people.
Look, so let's say that I'm going to give you an analogy here. Let's say that I am the father of a pair of twins, right? These twins are infants. Mm-hmm. They're very, very dumb. Or actually, let's say that they are let's say that they're like adult aged, but they're both very, very intellectually disabled. They're very mentally handicapped. So they live in like a home, right? They can't take care of themselves. And so, while I'm at work, I drop them off at a home every day so that somebody can look at them while I'm working, right? Now, while I'm at work, while my adult kids are at the home, one of my employees, who was a good employee when I hired him, one of my employees decides to quit all of a sudden. And he curses me out. He yells at me. He breaks the window on my glass. He's just like an all-around huge jerk. One of my employees, right?
Yep.
Now, he happens to have the like he was one of my best employees, so he happens to have like the contact information of the home. And you know, he could go and he could screw with my kids if he wanted to.
Yep.
Now, I happen to know that this is the kind of thing that he would do. So, I could, after he quits in this fit of rage, I could call the home and be like, yo, one of my employees might be coming to, like, you know, harass some of your people who are staying there. Let your security guard know not to let him in. And then I could give him the description, just let that not happen. But then I don't do that. And instead, I actually get notified by the home. Hey, one of your employees is kind of like looking really crazy right now, and he's like walking into the home. Should we be worried? And I just say, yeah, don't worry about it. Would I be a good father?
I do get the point that you're making, but God does protect people in a way too.
How did he protect Adam and Eve?
He told them he told Adam and Eve not to eat the apple, that he gave them everything.
Yeah, but they were mentally, they were like intellectually disabled, right? They didn't know anything.
Sorry, I'm having you're telling the intellectually disabled people not to. I'm having a hard time understanding what you mean.
Adam and Eve are so in this analogy, my intellectually disabled children are Adam and Eve. Yes. And the reason I say that is because Adam and Eve had literally just been created, and they literally, like, because they hadn't eaten from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they literally had no idea what good and evil were. They knew nothing. They were, I mean, for all intents and purposes, they knew as much as like somebody, as like an adult who knows nothing, right?
But it's more of a thing where humans will always disobey God, right?
Apparently not, unless like the devil sneaks in and, you know, tells the truth to a literal day-old human.
And I think it's also with. Hold on. Let me.
I mean, God didn't have to let the snake in, right? God could have called his angels who are guarding the front door and be like, "Hey, close the door. Satan's about to come in."
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't, because he's a bad father.
I don't know, man. I might have to come back to formulate my opinion like later, but
okay, that's fine.
You got me on this. I'm not gonna lie.
All right, Taste the World. Thank you for being here.
Look into it.
Yeah, I appreciate the humility. Take care.
Yeah, thanks, bro.
All right, let's read some super chats. We'll move on. From Skeet Sayer with the 5 Canuck bucks. You should read the Sumerian tablets. Cancer after 1986 is Chernobyl, and that is not God. You know that we've found cancer in dinosaur bones, right? Cancer has existed for as long as life has existed, or at least multicellularity has existed. So no, it's not Chernobyl. No. In fact, personally, I know for a fact that it's not Chernobyl because my father's mother died when my father was 11, which would have been 1972, which is, she died of breast cancer, which would have been 1972, 14 years before Chernobyl. So that's like a crazy thing to say. From Skeet Sayer with the 2 Canuck bucks, God gave man free will, that is the key. Well, I don't know how free will gets you to breast cancer, but okay. From Skeet Sayer again with the 5 Canuck bucks. God only works if you believe. Human hubris is insane. I agree. I agree that it only makes sense if you already believe it. And from L'Oreal Ashley with the $20, thank you so much. Free will explains moral evil, not natural evil like childhood cancer. You don't need religion to have morals. If you can't tell right from wrong without it, that's a lack of empathy, not a lack of religion. Yeah, I mean, like, look, this is why nobody brings up with the problem of evil, this is why nobody brings up why do people get murdered? Like, because sometimes like free will is a theodicy for that. Natural evil, like childhood cancer or 2 billion animals burning to death in southwestern Australia, you can't explain that with free will. From Sean Hawkins with the $2, God is a slumlord. You could say that. And from Might You Find It Interesting with the $5, people who need a god to tell them what is right and wrong instead of knowing how to use basic empathy, I would consider truly dangerous. No, I would just consider that they need religion. And I wouldn't want to convince them of otherwise. From Skeet Sayer with the 2 Canuck bucks, types of cancer exploded after 1986. You know what else exploded in the 80s? Scientific research. And from DJ Bigley with the $2, hi. Hello. Hello. All right, let's see if we have any other guests. We do have a limited amount of time. Alternatively, we could just end the live early. Maybe that's the smart thing to do. I have some stuff to take care of. Yeah, because I only have 10 minutes. Yeah, I'm going to end the live early here. Guys, thank you so much for being here. If you want to talk with me, you got to join early. That is generally the rule. Second thing, if you want to ask questions, if you want to get announcements of when I'm going live, of when I post videos, if you want to ask me questions or ask other similarly interested people questions, join my Discord. As long as you're 18 years or older, you can go to discord.gg/drblitz. It's a cool place to be. And finally, if you want to support me, because who knows, maybe you want to give me money to encourage me to do this more frequently, you should become a YouTube member or a Patreon member. It's like $4 or $5 a month, and you'll get some nice perks. You'll get access to my debate notes. It's a cool way to support me, and it's a cool way to get access to some stuff that you might not know otherwise. I will see you guys on Sunday for Unapologetic, but until then, take care.